Mr. Chair, council members, and participants, we are now live.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a public hearing of the Committee on Public Safety regarding bills number 210802 and resolution number 220232. And before we get started, I will recognize Mr. Anthony Glass to read a required announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand the state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We're using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. Everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to Councilman Jones recognizing members for the questions or comments they have for the witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will be using the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to signify that members may wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Hour has come. Will you please read the roll so that we can establish a quorum?
Councilmember Green.
I am present.
Councilmember Gaudier.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and colleagues, and to all the witnesses present.
Good afternoon.
Councilmember Gim.
I think you're on mute. Member Gim.
Nope. Just waiting. So good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues, and good afternoon to all of our witnesses and panelists. Thank you, and look forward to this hearing.
Good afternoon.
Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember Thomas. Vice Chairman Johnson. Chairman Jones.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am present. A quorum has been established. Mr. Glass, will you please read the title of the bill and resolution?
Absolutely, and I'd also like to note for the record that Council President Clark is here with us today as well. Today we will be hearing...
We're in for a treat.
Today we'll be hearing testimony on Bill 210802, an ordinance amending Section 121120 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Abandoned Vehicles, to authorize public safety officers to authorize the removal of abandoned vehicles, all under certain terms and conditions, as well as Resolution 220232, a resolution authorizing the City of Philadelphia Council Committee on Public Safety to hold public hearings to examine enforcement practices, preventative measures, and potential solutions to necessarily address the widespread illegal dumping taking place in the City of Philadelphia, and to explore ways to collaborate with city agencies to address the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. At this point, I would like to recognize the President of City Council, who doesn't always testify at these hearings. So, Mr. President, are you there?
Yes, Councilman. How are you?
All right.
Would
you please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, thank you to the chair and members of the committee for giving me an opportunity to speak very briefly. I know you have a long schedule on a very, very significant and important issue to the citizens of the city of Philadelphia. Just briefly weighing in on the legislation that's before you, 210802. As you know, this is a part of a broader issue with respect to utilizing civil service personnel to do work that, frankly speaking, police officers probably didn't want to do and shouldn't be doing, and we can free police officers up to do real work. We heard a testimony from SEPTA yesterday that overwhelmingly the individuals that joined the SEPTA Transit Police, they joined it for that purpose, not to be there opening up the stations in the morning and some of the other things that currently they have the task of doing. This is very similar. Right now, we have police officers writing tickets for abandoned cars, and as you've seen across the city of Philadelphia, the number of abandoned vehicles are like all over the place. And as you talk about in this particular hearing today, this whole issue of blight, on the resolution talking about dumping, all of the challenges, abandoned vehicles that sometimes actually have create dumping sites because it gives the impression that nobody cares about that particular area. This is one that the state law authorizes a municipality to create a classification of personnel, civil service personnel, that can be in the union, even the FOP union, if so chosen, to be in a position to write tickets for abandoned vehicles. For the life of me, I don't understand why we haven't done this long before. But this could potentially free up a number of officers to allow us to deal with the proliferation of crime in the city and not spend their time writing tickets. So I respectfully ask for the support of members of the committee for this particular resolution. And I also want to support and give kudos to the chair, I guess the sponsor of 220232 and all the co-sponsors. That again is another one of those issues that is right before us, and along with public safety, the issue with respect to blight is right up there amongst the top three. So hopefully, as a result of moving this and having this discussion today, we can deal with a very, very significant issue because the people look to us for leadership to come up with solutions and not excuses. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. And I'll Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'll step aside and let you all get about the business of taking care of the committee. Thank you.
You're always welcome on any of our committees, Mr. President, and thank you for moving this important piece of legislation. It's the little things, if taken care of, respond to the big things that we can address. And so thank you for this division of labor emphasis so that people who are needed to take on tougher tasks of crime can do so by being freed up by public safety officers. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other members of the committee who would like to speak on this ordinance at this time? Or are we going to wait for the resolution as well? I think we will. All right. So with that said, are there any others that want to speak on this bill? No? All right. Mr. Glass, will you please bring up the first panel to testify?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to note for the record that Councilmember Canona Sanchez is joining us today as well.
Welcome,
Our first panel.
Member Sanchez.
Our first panel will be Inspector Fran Healy, Kimberly Washington, and Danita Bates.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you.
It's good seeing you all again. Right? I'm assuming, Mr. Healy, you'll go first.
Good morning, Chairperson Jones and other members of the Committee of Public Safety. First, on behalf of Commissioner Outlaw, thank you for allowing the Philadelphia Police Department to voice its opinion regarding Bill number 210802. At the outset, let me state that the Police Department supports this amendment being proposed to the City Council or City Code Section 12-1120 with the insertion of the public safety officers as an additional class of employees that would be available to process the state-required documents to PennDOT regarding abandoned vehicles. As you know, the Pennsylvania Vehicle Code governs the processing and retitling of abandoned vehicles throughout the Commonwealth. In the Vehicle Code Section 7301.1, a police officer is required to process all vehicles presumed to be abandoned. This has been the reason why the Philadelphia Police Department has historically assigned a police officer to this administrative duty or clerical task. We clearly have no options under state law. However, 7301.1 does permit non-police officers to process abandoned vehicles if such personnel are designated by ordinance of a municipality. This is the very purpose of this seemingly minor edit to Bill number 210802. By inserting an alternate class of personnel to process abandoned vehicles by a municipal ordinance, these new employees will be able to assist the existing abandoned auto unit personnel to process more abandoned vehicles to PennDOT. It is a necessary first step by state law to begin this process. So this Philadelphia Police Department is very grateful to Council Member Squilla for introducing this bill on behalf of President Clark. While this is a first hurdle, honestly, I would be remiss if I did not mention that it's clearly not the last hurdle, as the councilman had mentioned, prior to implementation. I say this not to be negative in any way, but to manage the expectations of City Council and the public at large as to the timing of any implementation. Even if the city is legally permitted to use this class of personnel to process abandoned vehicles under state law, there are clearly labor and contractual issues that must be negotiated or otherwise resolved between the city and the FOP before any implementation. This will take time, and the outcome is quite frankly uncertain. Nonetheless, we remain optimistic because if this program can be implemented, it will create a synergy where we could increase the existing capacity of the abandoned vehicle unit without compromising public safety or the safety of other officers. No additional officer will be needed to increase this capacity. So this concludes my testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I think we will hear from the other panelists before we open up for Q&A. I think you're on mute. You can begin your testimony.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So good afternoon, Chairman Jones and other members of the Committee on Public Safety. I want to start off by thanking Councilman Squilla and Council President Clark for their efforts to address the blight in our communities created by the plethora of abandoned vehicles that litter our streets, and further for inviting the Frankfort community to be a part of this discussion. I also want to thank Councilwoman Gauthier for her Just Services PHL campaign and her statements last week on social media about the correlation between blight, abandoned vehicles, and illegal dumping to the larger issues of stunted commercial growth, lower property values, and most importantly, higher rates of gun violence. As our city officials and police force work to better understand and address the current gun violence crisis, your efforts to expand city services by delegating ticketing authority to public safety officers is a step in the right direction. However, I want to be clear that I don't think this bill goes far enough, as it fails to address several loopholes that currently make enforcement challenging. And today I want to walk you through Frankfort's 4-year journey with the city around the issue of abandoned and hazardous vehicles in our community. I want to both point out some loopholes that we've seen folks exploit, as well as talk about the lack of enforcement for tools that are already exist to address the issue. Since 2018, my community has facilitated several public forums with the help of Councilwoman Sanchez and Captain John Walker to work with L&I and the Neighborhood Services Unit as it relates to the number of abandoned and hazardous vehicles parked on the street and the saturation of illegal car repair shops that serve as a nuisance to Frankfort residents. On several occasions, my staff was asked to work with residents to compile lists of abandoned vehicles and illegal car repair shops and to report these to the 15th District and local council office. This proved to be an encumbrance on both me and my staff and yielded no response. After compiling several lists with pictures and details about car make and model, tags and registration stickers to demonstrate the obvious need for enforcement and failing to get a response, we finally refused to compile any more lists. And I just want to pick up some pictures. One second. So after 3 years of working with local officials, last fall, the Neighborhood Services Unit finally conducted a sweep for abandoned vehicles within a 10-block grid of East Frankfort. And I just want to pull up the map so you can get an idea of our focus area. Sorry. So according to the 15th District, during the first 2 days of the sweep, they removed 38 cars from the 1600 block of Meadow Street alone and the 4600 block of Dara. The next day, 32 cars were removed from the 2000 block of Plum Street. And you can see those streets highlighted in purple on my map. So this is Dara Street, this is the 1600 block of Meadow Street, and this is the 2000 block of Plum Street. On day 3, we were scheduled to have our monthly stakeholder meeting on the 1800 block of Meadow Street, the Second Baptist Church, that's notated right here in blue on the map. And as the attendees and the police captain drove down Meadow Street, we all observed the mechanic on Meadow Street parking the cars that were towed the day before back on the streets. He simply went to the tow yard, paid some fees, and put all the cars back where they had previously been parked. On other days, I personally stood outside with residents and NSU officers during a sweep and watched shop owners run and grab cars and move them from one block to the next to avoid being towed. The current laws make enforcement challenging and give too much leeway to illegal actors. However, there is already laws on the books that prohibit auto repair shops from putting these vehicles on the streets, and if enforced, would make it harder for shop owners to return their cars and would bring in additional revenue for the city that could be used to provide additional capacity within the departments that are tasked with enforcement. Section 9-207 of the Motor Vehicle Repair, Sale, and Temporary Placement on City Streets provides that no person who owns, operates, or controls or who is employed in the business of repairing motor vehicles shall use any portion of the city sidewalks or streets, including parking spaces, for the repair, sale, or temporary placement of motor vehicles. This penalty comes with a $300 a day violation plus costs. In addition to working with the NSU, Captain Walker provided L&I with a list of 60 car repair shops within the East Frankfort grid and asked that they conduct reviews and inspections on these businesses to check for compliance. L&I was supposed to return to the community the following month with a report as to any action taken. We have yet to see that report and have not heard back from L&I about any enforcement action. Frankfort CDC actually compiled a list of businesses that were currently operating with no city business registration, no zoning, and they were or either they were out of their variance proviso period for their zoning. Any level of enforcement from L&I around business registration or zoning compliance will help alleviate the issue of the saturation of the shops in these residentially dense neighborhoods. The zoning process gives our residents who serve on the RCO committee the ability to say no more, enough is enough. However, without any enforcement from L&I on these issues, these business owners are free to serve as a nuisance to residents. The fact that there were 70 abandoned cars removed within 2 days just from 3 blocks is telling as to how inundated residents are with this issue. However, despite the abundance of abandoned vehicles on the street, I was almost embarrassed to find out that our zip code only produced 29 311 reports for the abandoned vehicles for the entire year in 2021. However, what I've come to realize is that this disconnect in the number of cars eligible to be towed and those reported signals our neighbors' frustration with the lack of response that comes from making a 311 report. My neighbors haven't stopped voicing their concerns. Rather, they have chosen to speak directly to our elected officials and city representatives about their complaints. The system is broken and residents know it. And no other neighborhood experiences the lack of attention and care more than low-income Black and brown communities. Abandoned vehicles aren't a problem in Northern Liberties, Center City, Chestnut Hill, Old City, Graduate Hospital, and other whiter, more affluent communities. When we talk about solving some of the dysfunction in our inner city neighborhoods, addressing blight is our way into establishing trust in those communities and restoring people's sense of faith that the system works for them too. You can't address gun violence and not address the chaotic environments in which our Black and brown men live. Yes, there are issues with systemic racism, a poor educational system, lack of access to quality mental health services, a lack of economic opportunities that all need to be addressed. And I take my hat off to all of the public servants who show up to work on a daily basis to try and tackle these issues. The issues before us today is what we call low-hanging fruit. I know the city is capable of doing a better job here. I am old enough to remember Mayor Street's neighborhood transformation initiative that resulted in tens of thousands of cars being removed from the streets. I also saw more recently what this current administration was able to mobilize when the councilwoman demanded that the city start to address the opioid crisis in Kensington. That resulted in 338 cars moved in 2 days. Again, I commend Councilman Squilla and President Clark for the first step, yet this legislation falls shy of addressing the root problem, which is lack of enforcement. I hope that following today's conversation, City Council takes a deeper look into the lack of enforcement for existing laws and to close some of the loopholes that keep our enforcement agencies running in circles in order to do their job. Thank you. Just wanted to, I'll run slides. really fast. I'm sorry, Councilman Jones.
No, that's
To show a
quite all
picture
right.
of what's on the street. So these aren't just abandoned vehicles. A lot of what we see in Frankfurt are hazardous vehicles that don't need a ticket. They can be towed immediately. But what we're seeing is residents are making these reports, and a lot of this stuff is taking months to get any response on. This is something that, a public safety officer or a police officer, again, doesn't have to come out and ticket. It can be taken right away. The other thing is we see a lot of lots. This lot right here is on the 4600 block of Margaret Street. Is zoned RM1 for multifamily residential use. So the car garage that you see in the rear of the lot that's operating, and the cars that are stored on the lot aren't even allowed to be on the lot. They can be towed just on the basis that that lot is not zoned for the use that they're using. So if we can get some enforcement on some of the existing laws, I think we could really make a dent in some of the abandoned car issues that some of the neighborhoods are facing. And this is just an example of 1311 report where you see the car is parked on the curb, not on the street. The windows are broken out. The 311 report was made, and you can see from the owner's complaint that it had been there for months before he got any resolution. And so I'll end with that.
Ms. Washington, thank you for this extensive report. And I want you to know that whether it's Frankfurt or parts of Parkside or West Philly in my district, we suffer from some of those same issues of lack of enforcement. So I feel the frustration that you feel when it comes to that. But thank you for documenting this report. We're going to hear from Ms. Bates, then we'll open up for questions. Ms. Bates, are you there? Ms. Bates? Are you on mute or? Anthony, do you see Ms. Bates there?
Mr. Chairman, I do not see Ms. Bates here.
Hi, I'm Ms. Bates. Bates is here because I got my camera blocked.
Okay, all right, Ms. Bates. Can you state your name for the record and begin your
I
testimony?
love you. It said my camera is not working. Y'all have me blocked or something.
Well, I don't know. We can hear you.
Okay, that's just, they disabled my camera. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Danita Bates. Hi. Thanks for having me here. This is one of my first testimonies before about abandoned cars, but it's been an ongoing issue. And it's not only cars, it's boats, tires, everything in the house, parts of a house, roofs. So it's just not a car issue. And because it's been going on for so many years. I don't know how many, but I'm still seeing the same issues under these bills. So I just want to put my 2 cents in. Excuse me, I'm still at work. I would like to put my 2 cents in. Like any bill that's going to be created, it needs to be effective. Like right now, I've had a abandoned car that's been there almost 3 years. And I've reported it, report to 301 as a 311 liaison person. So, and I'm still not saying, I know it's been the pandemic. Been getting a lot of things saying, well, the pandemic, this not done, we short of staff, things of that nature. So I'm hoping that the bill is including more hirees to help out with this situation. You call the police station, they'll tell you, oh, we don't have nothing to do with it. So the communication with the police stations is not good. I'm in the 22nd district. So again, thanks for having me. But if we can look more into that, especially in the 22nd district, 25th district, 25th, 26th, and 22nd, that's where I see a lot of the issues are. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a lot going on down City Hall. So if you hear some background noise, that's quite all right. With that, thank you for your testimony. Who is queued up first to questions? Anthony?
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Thomas is first for questioning.
Member Thomas, thank you for being here. Please begin your questions. Member Thomas?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you to all the chairs. I appreciate it. I'm still in council from this morning. I apologize. I just wanted to take a moment to first and foremost say thank you to Kim for all the great work that she's done in the Frankfurt session. I'm sure my colleague, Councilmember Sanchez, can speak more to this work than I can. But Kim and I've known Kim a long time, since the time she started the Frankfurt CDC, and I appreciate what she's done. Just one quick question. I listened to Kim's testimony around a lot of the abandoned issues and issues that we see specifically related to cars and trash and things of that capacity. And I'm wondering, from her perspective, what does she think the difference would be in a Frankfurt neighborhood if we seen a timely response to some of the issues that she communicated to us? Clearly, Frankfurt has a number of different problems as it relates to a number of different issues. But please, Kim, tell me from your perspective, if you've seen an improvement as it relates to these services, what impact do you think that will have on the Frankfurt community as a whole?
So I think I mentioned it a little bit in my speech, but I'll just reiterate and then I'll expand upon. I think what I said was, in order to do anything with a community, especially if you're going in and you're trying to tackle issues like gun violence and poverty and the more serious issues, and I think Councilman Jones and Councilman Clark alluded to this earlier, you gotta, earn people's trust. Right. And the first way you do that is making them feel like the city services are for them, too. Right. When we see other more, like I said, whiter and more affluent neighborhoods where these issues aren't as prevalent, we start to feel like you don't care about us. Right. And that's what and so I think that's the first thing. It starts to establish a rapport, a relationship, and a sense of trust between community members and elected officials and our policing. The other thing is, I think it also helps us. I know a lot of times we try to help block captains clean blocks, and I pull my corridor cleaners off of the avenue sometimes, and I tell them, go into some of the side streets. If you got a little extra time, go a block or two back and try to sweep some of those streets. A lot of those streets we can't even clean because all of the trash is trapped in between the cars, and the cars are in the way. So I think that's just one of the things. So I think it helps with cleaning up the neighborhood. If you think about it, it's like if you were a social worker and you were going out to a house to do a wellness check on the child, one of the first things you're going to look at is, what does the household look like, right? And if the household is in disrepair and chaotic, you kind of got an insight as to the parenting in that household and what that child is kind of living through every day, and sort of what is adding to why they're acting out, or, so it's the same thing when you go into a neighborhood, right? When you go into a neighborhood, people's business owners, they don't want to come here if it's dirty, right? They come off the L, and the first thing they see is, oh, it's nasty around here. You got a bunch of abandoned cars. But it's their perception of us in the community, right? It's not that they don't look at L&I and say, oh, L&I is not doing their job with enforcement, or the neighborhood services unit isn't towing these cars. It's a reflection on the residents, right? It makes it hard for us to attract businesses. And it's a chaotic environment for everybody who lives in it. So I think that's just some of the things that you can start to address by addressing blight in a neighborhood. I hope that answers the question, Councilman Thomas.
No, it definitely does. No, it definitely does, Kim. Thank you so much for your answer. And I think the biggest thing that stands out for me is not just issues around, public safety, but attracting businesses. When I think about, the Frankfurt L and the type of businesses that can be thriving under there, I agree with your perspective. It's very difficult to say I want to put my business there, especially if I need the street traffic, because street traffic is right there, right? A business could be very successful down there if the support systems that you just talked about were actually in place. So I think that your testimony is important. And of course, thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you're on
mute, Mr. Chairman. Member Sanchez, I'm thinking you're on mute. Member Sanchez, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I also want to take a moment and thank all the chairs and bill sponsors on today and this afternoon's conversation, which is hugely important around the non-police related public safety challenges that we have in the city of Philadelphia. I want to take a moment and really thank Kim Washington. And I think one of the things that Kim won't say, but I'll say it, you know, she's the executive director of the Frankfurt CDC, is we can't keep burdening residents and our organizations to do the work that we're not doing, right? And, you know, to her point, the level of frustration around lists and pictures and submissions, just like the 311 debate, I've had this debate with with neighborhood services and the police, because they're like, well, we get more 311 calls from this section. Well, there's 60 plus auto-related businesses in a geographical area, all which the residents listed. We have a going tally on who they are under the leadership of Representative Dawkins and Kim. We have been able to see some of these, and some of them have come up for zoning, and the neighbors have rallied together, and we've denied zoning. But this is basic service delivery. We have a business, it is operating, it either has a license or it doesn't, and that enforcement around the seizing is the first basic stuff. The issue, last estimates is that in this geography that Kim outlined, there's about 1,000 cars in that geography associated with the 60 plus businesses. There is nothing that I can say to residents there to make them feel better. And despite their frustration with us as the city around delivering those services, they still come to the meetings and they're still engaged. And we're still working through the issues. So I think that, again, Council Member Galtier's, Philly Services call, I think we cannot complete this budget cycle without addressing and reprioritizing these issues and providing relief. I have no doubt in my mind that the talent in Frankfurt CDC and the residents, that if we provided the core basic services, Frankfurt would thrive. Because these folks are ready. They roll up their sleeves when necessary. They still come out and support all of the things that we try to do on the corridor. So this is their plea. And again, my frustration around how service delivery is done to poor Black and Brown communities, which I represent, and the lack of equity when we look at these core issues. So I want to thank Kim for being that partner and staying in our face. And holding us accountable to these issues. I want to ask Healy a question as it relates to this, because I think it's hugely important to get it on the record. And I don't know if he has this information or not. 2 weeks ago, there was an article around the abandoned car situation. And I've had this conversation with Deputy Commissioner Dales over and over. How do we intend to catch up with the 34,000 cars, let alone sustain a plan for car removal in the city of Philadelphia?
Honestly, I can't speak on behalf of Commissioner. We are looking at to see how we can maximize the efficiency of the unit. I have Captain Van on with me so she can answer any backup questions. But yeah, we are taking it seriously because we do understand it's a quality of life issue, and our job is to serve the community, all of us. So we're trying to figure out a better way to do that with less resources. I believe the captain will jump on and mention as to the additional duties that she's been pulled into as a result of the lack of manpower that we have and the crime and the violence. So we're tapping into our neighborhood services unit to try to do two things at one time. And we're going to reevaluate that, obviously, to see how we can reprioritize and try to, like I was actually just texting her on seeing how we can expedite the removal of some of these car holes that are burned out completely, because that was a big thing back in 2000 with then Mayor Street, and how we accomplished that with special dispensations that we received from PennDOT. So I want to make sure that we are in fact still using that type of resource that was given to us, because quite frankly, I'm not sure it was ever rescinded. So I think it's still on the books. I still have the letter, so it's still good in my books. So that may be one way to help expedite getting some of these unidentifiable car holes off the street quicker. But I'm working with the captain, and I'm also working with Deputy Commissioner Dales, who's also very upset that we're not moving as many as we possibly can.
And before Captain Van comes on the record, I would just want you to know I work closely with this office. It is not their issue. It's a manpower issue. It's a deployment issue. And it's a capacity issue, right? So I just want to be really, really clear about this because I'm on the phone too much with Mary Bibbo and the whole team. So I don't want people to think that we're not communicating, but they can't do what they can't do. So I'd like to hear from Captain Van what the plans are over the next few weeks for us to play catch up.
Captain Van, are you there?
Good afternoon, everyone, council members.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, Captain Laverne Van. I'm assigned to the Neighborhood Services Unit. I'm frustrated as well, and I thank everyone for their patience, particularly Director Washington. You took it easy on us today with your statement. I was waiting, preparing myself.
I'm sorry. That was taking it easy?
Yes. Oh, yes. That was taking it easy.
We're in year 3 or 4 of this. Yeah, we're year 3 or 4 of this journey. So yes, thank you, Captain Van, for acknowledging that.
Absolutely. So as Councilmember Keona stated, we have other duties that have been pulling us away. The way that the command staff has designated things, we on a regular basis are positioned in pinpoint grids. That takes a large portion of the manpower. Also, in addition to pinpoint grids, we're sent to Welcome Back Center City. So one of the things that the deputy has done to increase the production, we have been working overtime, making great progress in just a week with the 311s, as well as towing abandons. So we have several different techniques that we use to try and take the vehicles, particularly that Director Washington spoke about, the burnouts and all the ones that are obvious hazards and tows off the street right away in volume. And I know you don't believe it, but the Kensington area, the 15th and the 24th, actually get a tremendous amount of service. At one point, we had 2 officers in the 15th, and that's the only district that's ever occurred in. And the officer that's assigned to the 15th tows 15% of the vehicles in this unit. She does a tremendous job. And I know that's not enough. I'm frustrated as well. So this weekend, we have a sweep that's not in your area, but we will be returning to your area soon. And I just wanted to add to those 2 areas that you mentioned earlier where 70 cars were taken. Actually, that was a 3-day sweep, and we took 139 cars in just 3 days. So it was.
I have information about the 2 days, but yes, you're right.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Why Kensington as a magnet for abandoned cars? I don't understand it.
It's part of the poverty, and then the fact that we have 800 homeless folks in the neighborhood, that cars become shelters for them. And so one of the reasons crime, particularly in the 15th geographically, is the largest police district in the city. And then when you layer the number of auto places that we have, it's just a magnet because of the nature of the kind of businesses that are allowed to operate there. So there's policy decisions that we make, and these are the consequences of them.
Thank you for that, member.
Thank you, Captain Van. Like I said, I wanted folks to be sure that, Captain, I am advocating for more resources for all of you. I understand the pinpoint strategy. We want to take care of some of the hardest hit police areas, but this, and what we want the police department to understand, and that's why this proposal is important. We want to take away those duties that others people can do so that you can do the business of policing. But quality of life issues around public safety are just as important in everyday, the everyday business of neighborhoods like Frankfurt. And so the blight, the boats, the cars, and the shootings all happen in the same area, and they're all interrelated, and that's why we want this to be prioritized. So we thank you. We look forward to working with you. We look forward to next weekend, getting some of these cars removed. And again, Mr. Chair, I want to thank Kim and all the work that gets done in this. This is about resources and prioritization and giving them the what they need, the tools, because in this case, this is about tools, resources, so that they can do these basic services that we need. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, member. Thank you, Ms. Washington. Again, Frankfurt owes you a debt of thanks for highlighting. No, I mean, listen, people often misconstrue public cries for service as being angry. No, you're involved. And but for you being involved, I'm not from Frankfurt. I'm not from Kensington. I'm not from. It's important for us to know what you go through so that we can be one city. And, between Alan Dom, Member Sanchez, and Member Squilla, we hear it, but it's different when we hear it from you. And so thank you for your testimony. Okay. Anthony, what do we have?
Councilmember Gim is next for questions or comments.
Thank you. Member Gim?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I just want to add my note of thanks to Ms. Washington for your dedicated presentation, and have to give a shout out to my fellow education warrior parent, Danita Bates, who is out there right now, as we could have seen her serving the school children of this city. Earlier this year, as many of us know, there's just a horrendous situation about children walking into schools where you could see piles upon piles of garbage, trash that had, ramped up on the very first days of school and even continuing through. And one of the things that I think Ms. Washington and Danita and many of us understand is that from the very first day, if it feels like your neighborhood is laden with trash, it feels like you're disposable too. And that is not an acceptable message that we can ever send. I think one of the things that I really appreciate about Ms. Washington and your presentation was how you very clearly zeroed in on problems that we should solve. And I absolutely believe that this body has a responsibility to enact common sense policies, which is absolutely what Councilmember Squilla and Clark's bill is all about for today. But we also have a responsibility to identify problems. Policies don't solve things on their own. And by the way, it's not the policy that exists. It's the reality that exists. The reality is the policy. And I think that more and more of us, especially my colleague, Councilmember Gautier, who's been championing the just services approach, and, folks like myself, we don't want to know what the promise is. What we want really in equity is not so much like an evenness of distribution. What we want is an evenness of outcome. So I think that's the clear thing that we're looking towards, that it's not about saying, can we distribute certain numbers? What we need to understand is that the outcome, the actual lived reality that people have has to be equitable. And so you are going to see differences then in resources that can be allocated. We're going to have to see different ways. If policy isn't working, then we have to go in and really convene departments and pull them together, because it isn't just on the police. It isn't just, as has been said before, on any one problem. In places where we see entrenched problems, it's because something's not working and multiple agencies actually have to come together. So I just wanted to add my voice to that, Ms. Washington. I think what I heard from you is not so much about, whether we're trying or this and that, but we're really going to be evaluated over ultimately the outcome. And I just also want to add a little bit that, there are many different interpretations about quality of life. And, fundamentally to me, this is a livability agenda. It's not just like ranking us on a scale of like what the quality is. it's fundamentally livability. And I really appreciate the efforts that Danita Bates has done as a longtime education organizer, Ms. Washington, for your tremendous work at Frankfurt CDC in identifying these problems, to get this city on the right track and to have us begin to evaluate not just whether there's intent or distribution, but actually what is the livability of our neighborhoods? Is it equitable? And I firmly believe, like you do, that removal of abandoned cars, blight, sealing of vacant lots, greening of our properties, care for our public schools, and certainly the cleaning, maintenance of city streets is as much a tough on crime agenda, as much a public safety agenda as anything else that we can do. And in fact, it's even more viable because it's sustainable. It's investments in people's lives. It's telling people that they matter. And most of all, it's sending a message to young people who walk through their streets that this city is looking out for them. So thank you very much. Sorry to go on. I just, I'm incredibly grateful to you put in a tremendous amount of work, Ms. Washington, into your presentation, and all of us feel it and show it. And what we want to be able to respond to you with is a significant amount of effort to get through that problem-solving aspect of it, not the policy, not just the policy. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you, Helen.
I just want to reiterate what our member Gim said. When you said the street mobilization to remove cars, gave me a flashback as to how important that was in turning neighborhoods around. And all of a sudden, people start looking at the neighborhood differently and start investing. So it is the broken window theory, but it's more than that. It's an economic engine, and it starts by just removing cars. So
Right.
I'm thankful for the presentation. Chair recognizes member Goodyear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank Ms. Washington for her work and her advocacy, and also for illustrating for us what it feels like to live in a neighborhood that's not getting its fair share of services and care from the city, and for also, really clearly making the connection between that dynamic of not being served well and violence in our communities, and also a breakdown in trust between community members in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you for your passion. Thank you for your work. And thanks also for acknowledging the Just Services PHL campaign, which is, just a statement that we should come out of this budget cycle in a different way. We should come out of the FY23 budget cycle in a way that resources our agencies appropriately to prioritize neighborhoods that are that deserve extra attention and support from the city of Philadelphia in this moment. I also wanted to invite you to a hearing we're having on the 13th of May at 10 a.m. Entirely about abandoned autos and how we can do better at this issue, and how we can come out of this budget cycle set up in a different way to really address this issue for our neighborhoods. So I'll follow up with you by email, but wanted to just make that invitation. I also have a question for Inspector Healy, if this is something that you can speak to. I think all of us agree that the police have very serious work to do, right? I mean, all of this is serious, but the police have serious work to do on homicides and shootings, right? Among other serious crimes. What is the objection of the union to this idea of public safety officers that can be devoted to helping us with these quality of life issues? I am lost as to why this should be something that has, drugged this issue out for 3 years now.
Well, I clearly can't speak for the FOP, but the theory behind their argument is it's a logical theory. What happens is if you're taking bargaining unit member jobs away. If you're replacing a bargaining unit member with somebody who's paid less or whatever the case may be, you're in essence removing a bargaining unit member from that job or that function. That needs to be negotiated. Okay, so that doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means that the union needs to be involved in it and needs to negotiate it. So that's a bargaining unit. It's a required bargain. To my understanding, it's a bargaining unit requirement for before we implement it. But it doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means it has to be negotiated with the union. But that's the theory behind it, that you're taking a job away, and therefore that has to be negotiated, or it can just be unilaterally done by the administration.
Okay. Thank you for shedding some light on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for this panel? Any other questions for this panel? Well, thank you all for your valuable testimony. And we will now take a recess from the public hearing to go into a public meeting to consider action on this bill. For those witnesses, will you please disengage so that we can begin our public meeting? Take a minute to do that. Thank you all. And now, Mr. Glass, will you please call the roll so that we can establish quorum?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Councilmember Green.
I am present.
Councilmember Gaudier.
Present.
Councilmember Gim.
I am present.
Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember Thomas.
Good afternoon. I'm present.
Vice Chairman Johnson. And Chairman Jones.
Present. We have established a quorum. So can you please read the title of the bill once more?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So it is bill number 210802, an ordinance amending section 121120 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Abandoned Vehicles, to authorize public safety officers to authorize the removal of abandoned vehicles, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Now the chair recognizes Member Gaudier for a motion. You okay, member?
I didn't hear you say anything, but it could be my connection. I'm sorry. And I'm also pulling up the script.
That's all right. I'm recognizing you for a motion.
1 second. Sorry.
That's quite all right. My LA was supposed to have that highlighted and over to. I'm gonna have to have a word.
That was my bad. Hold on. That was my fault. Sorry. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 210802 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and properly second that bill number 210802 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to allow first reading of this bill at our next session of council. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is approved. We will now go back into our public hearing to deal with resolution number 220232. And I would like to give an opportunity to Ms. Member Gautier to give some opening remarks about this resolution.
Okay, and I also have a presentation that I need for Sydney Schultz to put up. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for hosting this hearing and for everything that you do to promote public safety in our communities, both through this committee and outside of it. We are here today to discuss Philadelphia's stubborn illegal dumping program, a problem, the causes, the impacts, the effectiveness of current efforts by the city, and possible solutions to bring relief to our communities. I called for this hearing as a part of my Just Services PHL campaign, which is calling for immediate investments in basic services and quality of life enhancements for the neighborhoods that need them most. The timely delivery of basic municipal services is at the core of a well-run city. But here in Philadelphia, too often, those services aren't carried out evenly from neighborhood to neighborhood. And low-income communities of color tend to bear the brunt of the harm that this causes. The images that you're seeing on your screen are just a sample of the complaints that my office has received over the last 2 years from concerned residents who live near dumping sites. As you can see in the photos, trash regularly piles up just steps away from people's homes, schools, and businesses. Each time that residents are confronted with this blight in their communities, they're confronted with an environment that reflects the neglect they receive on behalf of their city government. As a district council office, my team and I field dozens of complaints and requests from our constituents each day. And after a while, we sense that the problems our constituents face aren't being felt equally across the city. Data bears this out. The Office of Controller Rebecca Reinhardt, who we're grateful to have with us here today, compiled and analyzed 311 data from last year. This data gives us a fairly good sense of not just the most common concerns in our city, but also how complaints are distributed geographically. And what the Controller's Office has found is that out of the total calls to 311 last year regarding illegal dumping, only 3.1% came from Center City. Meanwhile, if we count complaints from zip codes experiencing the highest rates of gun violence, they make up 59% of the total complaints. Just this statistic alone points to the fact that the way the city responds to illegal dumping is not equitable. Neighborhoods outside Center City are not receiving the same urgency or quality in terms of the response they're seeing. And this is more than just aesthetics. It's an issue of public safety. The data suggests a strong correlation between subpar city services and higher rates of violent crime. And it's also an issue of public and environmental health. Tires, which are one of the most common materials we see getting dumped illegally, are incredibly susceptible to combustion. The average tire has 7 gallons of oil in it, to give you a sense of how flammable and harmful they are. I hope that today's testimony sheds light on the experiences our community members are having on a daily basis. And I hope it helps us understand what our city leaders plan to do to rectify the fact that Black and brown neighborhoods simply aren't getting the same level of trash collection services that we are seeing in wealthier, whiter neighborhoods. We are in the midst of budget season, and this conversation is directly tied to city spending, because this is the time to make the investments that will finally allow us to make headway in tackling this important issue. And as we're also contending with a historic gun violence crisis, keeping our neighborhoods clean is a key part of keeping them safe. This is a fact we need to accept and act on for Philadelphia residents in this moment. The $2 million that Mayor Kenney has proposed to address illegal dumping in the upcoming budget doesn't even scratch the surface of what we need to do in order to improve conditions in our communities. No matter what neighborhood you live in, no matter what your zip code is, you deserve to live on a clean, safe street, and you deserve to have a city government that is responsive to your needs and concerns. And that's what today's hearing is all about. And so with that, I'll say thank you, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from our witnesses.
Thank you so much, Member, for raising the obvious. Sometimes you you see a thing so much you become numb to it. And it is unfair. And we share an area bordering Marion Avenue. And you know that street, it is infamous for dumping. And the Commissioner Williams has helped me out. I have called him and, he takes the time out to remove the tires. And the very next day, there were more tires. We tracked it down. It was a story that the guy said, I don't care, fine me. And I think it might have been the highest fine that was ever received by a dumper. Well, I think it might have been $50 per tire, something like that. But it still has not stopped the flow of trash and disrespect given to a neighborhood. So thank you, member, for this. Mr. Glass, can you please are there any other members that may want to comment?
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes. Member Gim, please begin. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I also want to acknowledge and thank the incredible work of Councilmember Gautier on this important issue. This is something clearly that every single member of City Council has deeply cared about, and is a significant issue in so many communities all across the city of Philadelphia. But it is important when we're facing very difficult situations like this that we put a new lens on problems that have only grown in magnitude and whose urgency we feel right now to address, especially as Councilmember Gautier said. We are dealing with the concurrent crises of both COVID, gun violence, and opioids. And these things are all interrelated. The one thing that I would also want to put out there a little bit is that I know that our administration is going to say that we put resources out, services do go out. But I would urge us to think that the Just Services campaign that Councilmember Gautier is helping to lead is not merely about the distribution of existing resources, because I think many of us understand that the existing resources that we have right now may not be sufficient. What we are looking for is equity in outcome, equity in the livability. And yes, it is true that you can, as you said, Mr. Chair, that you can remove a set of tires, and the very next day it may fill up. And the task is not to simply be defeated by that, but to recognize then a new set of solutions may need to come into play, that it may not be a situation that is dealt with by one single agency or entity, but actually in certain parts of our city, a collective effort needs to be brought to bear. And one of the most important things that the city can and must do at this time is to actually convene multiple agencies together in an all-hands-on-deck effort to respond and then to deliver. What we find very much is that the administration, many people are working as hard as they can. But unless we all double down, bring our resources together, we're actually not going to fix some of these problems, because if these problems exist, they exceed our existing capacity. So something different must happen. What I appreciate about Councilmember Gautier and about all the witnesses who are here to testify is that you are putting a new lens on an existing problem, but one that has never been more urgent for us to figure out problems too. And in fact, it's not just merely about resources. It's not merely about assignment of personnel, but reconvening a new look at how to break through some of the fixed problems, things that we heard from Ms. Washington, lessons that we're hearing, or consequences that we see from an activist like Danita Bates. These are the things that we are looking for right now, because the solutions may not apparently exist within our current city structure. But the Just Services campaign is not about just replicating structures that aren't meeting need. It's about restructuring our city so we meet the needs of people, so that we actually get something done and that people can feel it. I think people need to feel that we are working as hard as ever, and that isn't just about the endless toiling of streets department personnel. This is actually about a visible convening of people. Councilmember Jones, you yourself said that people want to feel like they're part of a city that's pulling itself together, despite these horrible things that are happening to us, despite like levels of inhumanity that feel unbearable. But when people see groups coming together, when it's not just on a streets department uniform, but is actually about the city convening large groups to come together, exciting people about the possibility of a united front on impossible situations, we're going to see progress. More importantly, we're going to see sustainable engagement. We want a livable city, not merely cities that are evaluated according to, data metrics. It's not about data. It's not about reports about things that we already know. It's about fixing problems. And if we can't fix them through one entity, the city has a moral responsibility, and it has the power to convene agencies to push our way through these barriers. And the willfulness, that we've got in the destructive things that are happening to young people and to neighborhoods and to our Philadelphia. So I just want to add my voice to that I do want to be thoughtful about making sure that we evaluate based on evenness and equity of livability and outcomes as much as we do on distribution, because ultimately we will be judged on what people can see, on what is delivered to them, not just on what we do.
Thank you so much for that, Member Gibb. Thank you. Chair recognizes Catherine Gilmore Richardson. Member, are you there? There you are.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I know that I'm not a member of the Public Safety Committee, but as the chair of Council's Committee on the Environment and someone who is often dealing with this issue in a variety of ways, I wanted to log on just to show my support for this issue. It's an issue that we're all seeking to tackle in City Council and all try to work together to get the job done for our constituents. Because at the end of the day, when I get those calls, the only thing I could do is make the call. And so what we want to do is figure out how we can do as much as we can to ensure that we are addressing the quality of life needs of our constituents here in the city of Philadelphia. So I want to thank Councilmember Gaudier for this resolution, Councilmember Gim and you, Mr. Chair, for your remarks, and also wanted to give a special thanks to all of the witnesses who are providing testimony today, and also utilize this opportunity to say a hearty thank you to Commissioner Williams and Deputy Commissioner Warren, who I call, I think, every single day. And so I just wanted to say thank you for your work, the work of all of our sanitation workers who are just doing all the heavy lifting. We appreciate your service, and I'm looking forward to this hearing to hear about solutions to help us tackle this issue, because we're not going to be able to resolve this by just continuing to do what it is that we know we all do, but we're open to new and innovative strategies to ensure that we continue to meet the needs of our constituents. So thank you all so much for this hearing. This is a wonderful resolution, and just wanted to offer my kudos and thanks to our sanitation workers in the streets department. Thank you.
Mr. Glass, can you please read the names of the first panel to testify on this resolution?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The first panel to testify will be Nicholas Esposito.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Jones, members of the committee. Thank you for having me testify. Nick Esposito, and I'm the Director of Policy and Engagement for Circular Philadelphia, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to drive the circular economy in Philly to reduce waste and boost our local economy. You all might remember, I also served as the Philadelphia Zero Waste and Litter Director from 2016 to 2020, and I'm here to testify on Resolution 220232. Through my service to this city and my continued residency in East Kensington, I know illegal dumping is a vexing issue. Just after I started as Zero Waste and Litter Director in 2017, we recorded 11,000 tons of illegally dumped material, 13 arrests, of which most of them were low-level summaries, litter index scores that showed concentrations of illegal dumping in North Philadelphia, Southwest Philadelphia, and Kensington, and a fragmented government approach to addressing this issue. During my time as director, we were able to cut illegal dumping by 40%. In 2019, we had 35 arrests, which is almost triple the amount in 2017, with a record number of high-level arrests. And even more importantly, the cabinet worked tirelessly to develop a coordinated response among city departments and other stakeholders. We also normalized the mindset in the MDO, the police, and the DA, or the district attorney's office especially, that you cannot arrest your way out of this problem. Here's how we were doing it. Initially, the Litter Enforcement and Cleaner Public Spaces Committee, which was started by the cabinet, came up with a list of 31 recommendations, both reactive and proactive, for how to effectively address litter and illegal dumping. Each recommendation was run through a 3-part vetting process to answer these questions. Can it be done? Will it work? And is it worth it? Of those 31 recommendations, which can be found in the 2017 Zero Waste and Litter Action Report, as well as subsequent updates, it culminated in this 5-step process to address illegal dumping that was working, and I want to lay out again for this committee. First, better surveillance. When it comes to illegal dumping, the reactive solution is always to add more cameras. Of course, video evidence is of major importance for successful prosecutions, but video surveillance is useless unless you can efficiently review and collect the evidence and effectively submit it to the proper authorities. The cabinet, in partnership with the University of Pennsylvania, had developed an artificial intelligence algorithm that was reported on today in the Philadelphia Citizen, which trains computers on to learn what debris looks like of tires, contractor bags, and building joists to start. By running this AI model, the computer could detect in seconds the exact point on the video when illegal dumping occurred, rather than hours it would take to sift through footage. Of course, after the cabinet was disbanded, this work was not continued with Penn, and the city lost another great partnership. But the even larger loss after the cabinet was disbanded was the hole that was left in the strategic collaboration that the cabinet fostered. Each month, reps from the law department, PPD, the DAO, LNI, and streets, and other enforcement departments would meet to review a case tracker that tracked arrests by the police, charges by the DA, and prosecutions. For the cabinet, police routinely mischarged illegal dumping as summaries when they should have been misdemeanors. The DAO did not regularly track illegal dumping cases with their ADAs, and judges would throw cases out. This monthly meeting resulted in that record level of arrests because we ensured that nothing was slipping through the cracks. Number 2, increased fines. As noted already, increasing fines is exciting and makes it appear to the public that we're taking this issue seriously. But those increased fines mean nothing if not successfully prosecuted. By having the police and DAO on the same page for charging, prosecution, judges more aware of the issue, those fines actually had a chance of properly holding someone accountable. We were also able to impound vehicles, and most importantly, we worked with the law department to calculate the cost of destruction of property or lost staff time that the department tasked with cleanup faced due to illegal dumping, and we were able to tack on restitution payments that offenders were mandated to pay along with fines. Finally, we were adamant that the true scourge of illegal dumping is not the young person whose boss told him to go dump if they're doing a job. It's the boss who made a business practice of illegal dumping. But if we did arrest a worker for a company or a person with no prior records, we utilized diversion programs that mandated dumpers needed to do community service with the Community Life Improvement Program to clean up lots. Otherwise, we had created within the cabinet the Environmental Crimes Unit within the police department to have detectives getting back to that person who makes a business out of dumping. Number 3, communications. As I already mentioned, dumpers need to be put on notice that the city's taking this seriously. If you get caught, it's not just a cost of doing business fine of $300. We held multiple press conferences with the DAO and the mayor's office to publicize arrests and keep the initiative in the public view through the Don't Dump on Us campaign. All of that has been abandoned by this administration. Number 4, regulations. In line with the ethos that you can't arrest your way out of this issue, the small-scale waste hauling industry is one of the most poorly regulated industries in Philadelphia. State law only regulates large-scale vehicles like trash trucks and tractor trailers, as well as tire haulers. However, there is no regulation for small trucks. Working within the existing conditions, the cabinet passed legislation that now mandates the contractors need to list the company with their commercial activity license that's hauling materials for new construction, demo, or renovation jobs. The cabinet also helped pass legislation creating a tire dealer license, that was sponsored by Councilwoman Sanchez, for licenses and inspections that would, among many things, mandate the tire shops keep receipts of incoming tires, as well as state-mandated receipts on tire disposal to make auditing more effective and to use state-licensed haulers. These were all important steps in the right direction. However, there's currently no entity mandated to cross-check the waste hauler information on permits with illegal dumping arrests, which the cabinet used to do. And to my knowledge, the tire dealer license has not been fully enacted. Even if it was, with the multiple departments and state agencies involved, you would need something like the cabinet to make it successful. Number 5, activate vacant lots. This is the last part of our process. So there's many factors that contribute to illegal dumping. The 40,000 vacant lots in the city are 40,000 opportunities to illegally dump. First and foremost, the city needs to have an effective and coordinated strategic plan to maintain, dispossess, and activate all of these lots. The urban ag plan and the work of entities like the Neighborhoods Gardens Trust is a good step in the right direction. The land bank, if properly functioning, is the mechanism for dispensing or dispossessing vacant lots. FLIP cleans them up. But to my knowledge, there's no long-term strategic plan that brings all of these departments together to ensure the maintenance, dispossession, and activation. Cabinet had developed a short-term activation plan for city-owned vacant lots that was statistically proven to encounter more dumping. The cabinet had an entire plan that involved a menu of different types of activations, like sitting gardens or even commercial activities like food trucks. And the idea was to create an easy front door access to applications for organizations with insurance who are vetted to apply for a general category of activation and then satisfy the simple zoning, permitting, and licensing needed. This plan was vetted by the MDO. It was almost enacted, but like many other activities in this testimony, cast aside. To my knowledge, there's no comprehensive plan for doing this right now. In short, the city had an effective plan that was making incredible progress, and they squandered this opportunity by cutting a cabinet that was costing the city $175,000 per year to maintain, but creating an outsized impact. The logic of cutting the zero waste and litter cabinet was that the Kenny administration needed to focus on core services during the pandemic, and explicitly not long-term strategy. This decision was then accompanied by weeks-long trash delays, suspension of recycling, and a surge in illegal dumping. I've not seen any numbers published by the city on illegal dumping tonnages in 2021, which is a problem in itself. So I don't have a full calculation of how much this issue is currently costing the city. But the whole reason we're having this hearing is because of the short-sighted decisions of this administration around illegal dumping are obvious and have most likely cost the taxpayers exponentially more money than the cost of something like the cabinet. So aside from my first advice that the city should just continue to follow the evidence-based, data-driven plan that was already working, here are a few more pieces of advice. Number one, bring back centralized leadership in the NDO to do this work. This fits right in with the concepts such as Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson's advocacy for a whole government approach to solving problems, which is driving the Environmental Justice Commission. Some of the work described above has reverted back to the Streets Department, which was the status quo before the cabinet was created. We knew then, which is why the cabinet was created, and it should be obvious now, the Streets Department lacks the positioning in government, mandate, and capacity to lead this work. Number two, implement aspects of the 5-point plan that haven't been completed, such as the tire dealer license and vacant land activation. Circular Philadelphia, we're working with our partners like Sunflower Philly around short-term activations of vacant land. There are plans, and there's plenty of people who've been activating vacant land. Tap into that talent and that knowledge in the city and make it work so we have less places to dump. Number three, allow people to dump small loads in sanitation centers. Through my work with Circular Philadelphia and our many partners such as Mural Arts Trash Academy and Terrell Hagler, aka Your Fate Trashman, who you'll hear from in a second, we're collectively advocating for this simple solution. The city has an existing construction and demolition recycling contract. Get the company who has that contract to place recycling dumpsters at sanitation convenience centers. Then allow vehicles no larger than a pickup truck to bring in construction and demolition debris to put in the dumpsters. Charge those dumpers a flat fee of $30 per dump, just for a pickup truck. It's a lot less than the $100 minimum ton fee at local construction and demolition recycling companies, which we believe is leading to more illegal dumping because sometimes people don't have a ton load and don't want to pay for it. Now, I know the Streets Department is going to say it's not feasible because city departments can't take money from private contractors or city facilities, but that's simply untrue. What I described is the exact system already in place at the Fairmount Park Organic Recycling Center, where contractors drop off organic debris for a fee and also pick up mulch and wood chips for a fee. This can be done. It just takes creative and competent leadership in the Streets Department. Finally, on the topic of creative and competent leadership, this legislative body must hold departments accountable. We can no longer allow departments like the Streets Department to continue to deflect blame, claim the conditions are outside of their control while not using the data to understand the conditions, and continue to not provide adequate numbers to measure their performance. We need to mandate that the city continue with the annual litter index to better understand litter and dumping conditions in the city, and there needs to be key performance indicators set to monitor the response to illegal dumping. To my understanding, we have performance management in the CAO to set key performance indicators for a well-functioning, fully auditable performance management system to set the bar for what we should expect from a city department. Councilwoman Gautier's Just Services PHL program is a correct ethos for this goal, but it needs to be supported by a viable accounting model to meet those KPIs. In conclusion, I hope that my experience I shared with you from my time as Zero Waste and Litter Director has been valuable and insightful. As I've said multiple times, the city had a well-functioning plan that was supported by the data, and we need to bring this plan back as well as continue to improve upon it in a transparent and effective way. I have to admit, I have no desire to come back and work for this administration but I will always be in service to this city, and I would be happy to serve as a resource to share my expertise with whomever assumes the task of reestablishing and progressing this plan. Thank you for allowing me to testify, and I'm happy to take anything.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I have a few questions before I turn over it to Member Gautier. So, do you agree with Member Gautier, the author of this resolution, that there is a environmental injustice due to short dumping?
Yes, I completely agree that there's an environmental injustice to this. And as has been pointed out multiple times, and as the litter index showed, concentrations of this illegal dumping are happening in parts of the city that have been historically disadvantaged. Mural Arts, I don't know if they're going to show this, but have a map of the litter index where it actually lines up almost perfectly to where the city was redlined. So this is a historic injustice of services not being put, and people know where to go. So you had asked before, Councilman Jones, about cars. People know where they can go and get away with this stuff, and that's why they're doing it, and we have to change that narrative.
Second part of it, if you were to say domestic or people in construction or residents on neighbor, who is dumping in your analysis?
Again, that's why we need the data on this, because I think when we learned from the zero waste litter cabinets from the litter index was that initially you think contractors are doing the dumping. I also, for a stint after this, I worked for the city. I worked for a tech company called Litterati that would use artificial intelligence to be able to take pictures of litter and then categorize it. When we were doing our own categorizing, even before using that kind of technology, we were seeing in illegal dumps things like drywall, paint cans, rolled up rugs, clothes. When you start seeing stuff like this, it's not a construction from a contractor from a new construction. It's a clean out. So we would see a vast amount of people cleaning out apartments, especially in concentrations like near heavily student areas like Temple University, that would just go get the clean out and dump. Heavy eviction areas, you see the same thing. So it's a mix of people that are doing this, and also there are businesses like tire shops and others that just have a lot of waste, don't feel like paying for the services, and just go dump them on a lot close by. But again, you have to have the data to understand what's happening where.
In reference to tires, that you mentioned a registration process that can track where tires come. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So the tire dealer license that was passed by this body back in, I believe, 2019, basically did a few things that were important. One was, right now, every tire shop, if you go get your tires changed on your car, you're going to get a fee that goes to the Department of Environmental Protection. It's like $2 for the disposal of those tires. So they do calculate those, and they're supposed to keep those receipts. The problem was there's no auditing on the other side. So you might get 100 tires in. You say you recycled 50. Well, there's no way to know that difference if you don't know what came in. So that was the first thing that it did. Another thing that was great about the legislation was just running a tire shop better. I've seen some good tire shops and some bad tire shops, just getting them to operate better in the city. And then also, you're not allowed to use any hauler other than a state certified hauler. We had the list, and we were working with the state of who tire shops can use to haul their tires, to keep that on track and record, and being able to do inspections. So in an ideal world, you have L&I working with the DEP, going in and doing joint inspections of tire shops, making sure that they have all their proper paperwork, all their things, and if they don't, taking action from there, which L&I, we are all poised to do, and again, it's just something that needs to be promoted forward.
I'm going to relinquish the mic and go to the author of this resolution, Member Gautier.
I mostly
Check your mic.
I got it. I mostly just want to thank you, Nick, for your past work and for being here today and for continuing to be an advocate for how we can do this better. I'm very interested in hearing more about the AI model that you worked on with UPenn. Can you talk about what stage of implementation or what stage of creation were you in with that model, and what would we have needed to do to bring something like that to scale to help us have a better solution for dumping?
Thank you for that question. Thank you for this hearing, and also thank Councilman Jones for those great questions as well. So where it came together was, I think it showed the power of the cabinet, right? We had a data subcommittee, we had a behavioral science subcommittee, and then we had the enforcement subcommittee. Professor Dan Hopkins from University of Pennsylvania was on the behavioral science. We were running randomized control trials, really trying to understand the issue. He came to me and offered and said, I have these students who could probably do something like this. I know you all are having trouble monitoring tape, right? So there's different ways that we have video. Like I have Ring cameras on my house. It's a pretty amazing technology. I could look at them right now. I could go back through the whole day of what's happening. Well, we don't always have footage like that. Sometimes the footage isn't motion detected. You have to sift through it a lot longer. So we saw this problem, and he said, I think you can solve for this. So we got a bunch of students together, and what they did was they trained an artificial intelligence machine learning model for a computer to train it to understand what a trash bag looks like, building joists and tires to start. So there's people power involved in that. Every time the computer gets it right, you hit yes. Every time it gets it wrong, you hit no. And over time, the machine learns. So we like to say that we started a baby brain machine that could be able to detect this. And they were growing it into like a teenager brain. So you're teaching it more and more. But what the power of this could do is you could basically run the algorithm on a whole 72 hours of footage of tape. We would say, if a rec leader leaves a rec center at Friday night, goes home for the weekend, comes back on Monday afternoon when they start their shift again, and there's a legal dump, you don't want to sit through 72 hours of footage and scan through it to figure out when it happened. In seconds, this could determine when a dump showed up on the site. So it just makes it a lot faster and a lot easier to review this. So we had presented it to the Litter Enforcement and Cleaner Public Spaces Subcommittee. We did present it at a quarterly cabinet meeting. This was in, I believe, the spring of 2019. And the following fall, they were going to get more students to do this. They got a little delayed, and then spring of 2020, we all know what happened with the pandemic, and the cabinet went away. So they had the model initiated. We were going to press it forward, and now with the cabinet not there, as to my knowledge, Professor Hopkins has not been contacted by the city.
Thank you so much for that. And my next question is more for the administration. I see that Mike Carroll is on. Can you or someone else explain the rationale for why we decided to cut the zero waste cabinet? And are there plans to bring it back?
Pardon
me? Why did we make that decision? And are there any plans to bring that back?
Mr. Carroll, please state your name for the record.
Yeah, Mike Carroll. I'm the Deputy Managing Director for, the Office of Transportation, Infrastructure, and Sustainability. Thank you, council members. And I just would say Nick was pretty much on point that this was a budgetary decision. And the focus at the time, if you recall, the end of the fiscal year, which was FY20, was to try and address as much as possible core services, given that we were looking at a pretty significant budget deficit. Very, very sad to see the cabinet go. I really want to acknowledge all the incredible work that Nick and the rest of the team were involved in. Essentially, at that time, the decision was not made to dissolve the cabinet, but to suspend it. And, that had to do with making sure that there was still an opportunity for us to continue the work, embedding as much as possible the remaining staff from the MDO side in the Office of Sustainability, and then trying to get Streets Department to pick up as much as possible the pieces which were more operationally focused. So between Streets and Sustainability, the intention was to continue with the work as much as possible. The second question in terms of bringing it back, I would probably need to coordinate with the managing director to give you a better answer on that. Talking with the rest of the administration, the model that was set forth in the cabinet, I think, did certainly have a lot of good effects in terms of identifying, opportunities to pilot ideas, opportunities to generate ideas, kind of thinking outside the box. But I feel like we still do have a lot of the core service issues to get back on track with. So how we would resource not just the cabinet, but the implementation of this, I think, is the key thing. The division of labor that we established took a little bit of time to get to, but at this point in time, the work that Nick was engaged in terms of zero waste has been picked up by the Office of Sustainability. And there's currently staff. Nitty Christian, who's in the Office of Sustainability, has been carrying forward with that work. We were grateful to have an opportunity week before last to really celebrate a lot of that work with council involved in that as well. But the litter focus, I think, has shifted directly to the streets department, and a lot of their energy has been devoted to the mechanical cleaning work. And so getting that broader citywide strategic long-term focus is something I think that has been a challenge, frankly. But under the leadership of the commissioner and Kyle Lewis, who's leading Cleaner Spaces work, we are standing up again. The approaches that Nick has talked through, maybe there's opportunity to bring in more focus on the pilot activities, but as far as reestablishing the relationships with police, getting them to kind of resource some of this, and not so much a shift away from their focus on violence, but trying to figure out how that intersects, as you've mentioned before, is currently what's on the agenda for us right now. But I might ask for Carl Williams to talk a little bit more about that work in particular.
And I'll address it, Mike. Good morning, council member, chairperson. I'll address it during my testimony. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
That's just fine. So what intrigued me about what Nick said was that, we were taking this whole government approach, right? And having all of these agencies working together to address this very persistent set of problems. Is it your sense that all of the activities that were being addressed by the Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet are currently being addressed by other areas of government? And is it your sense that the same level of coordination exists?
I don't think we've achieved that same level. I think that is the intention to get back to that place, but I'd say no, we're not there yet.
Okay. And what would it cost today to bring back that approach? Do you have a sense of that?
I think that like Nick says, it's not a lot of salary, to get people together. It's not a lot of operating funds to get people together. I think the key thing though is that there's the implementation pieces, and so there are a lot of good ideas that were developed by the cabinet and documented pretty well with the cabinet. The question is, not so much about adding more to the plate, but figuring out how the departments actually do that work. And they do that work on top of the work that they've, been doing before the pandemic and the work that kind of got added, during the pandemic for them to focus on as well. So that I think is really where you're going to see a real impact on the street. Those resources are, at least an order of magnitude greater than the resources of kind of managing those relationships and developing these ideas and developing these plans, and perhaps more so. And so I think that's something that you guys have been focused on, is how to achieve that greater level of resource to do the implementation.
But you would I'm sure you would agree with me that persistent illegal dumping in neighborhoods where people live, where kids play, where kids go to school should be kind of a baseline issue for the city
Absolutely.
of Philadelphia, and something that we're able to, do pretty well and take care of on a proactive basis too. Like Absolutely. This should be a priority for our city, not something so. That's like a cherry on the top type thing.
I agree.
Okay. I don't have any more questions for the witness.
Thank you. Are there any other committee members that want to ask questions at this point? If not, we will go to our next panel to testify. Mr. Glass?
Mr. Chairman, the next panel will be Terrell Hagler, Mark Harris, Shari Hirsch, and Stephen Kennedy.
Thank you so much. I believe, Mr. Hirsch, you are first. Good afternoon. It's not evening yet. Good afternoon. Are you there? Terrell Hirsch? I can see you, but I cannot hear you.
No.
You're muted, sir.
Are you asking for Hagler or Hirsch?
Hagler.
Okay, you said Hirsch, so I was a little confused. I'm sorry.
All right.
My name's Terrell Hagler. I'm also known in the city as your fave trash man. Good afternoon, council member, chairman, and all the other witnesses. I'm
I
here
got
just
excited.
to.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm here just to echo what Nick had wonderfully already spoke about. But I just want to add a part to it. Uh, as the last 2 years has taught me that there is a real need and a real want to clean Philadelphia from the residents. I spent a lot of my times talking to residents, organizing residents to clean Philadelphia. I just was in Kensington. We walked from Lehigh and Kensington to K&A, and we picked up 8 tons of trash in 3 hours with 200 volunteers, which is hands, brooms, shovels, and trash bags. And I say that to say that it is my hope that through the Just Service PHL that Councilmember Gauthier has proposed, that we find a way to create an illegal dump task force. I really believe if there was a way to create an illegal dump task force with people solely focusing on cleaning up sites, keeping sites clean, monitoring sites, and giving them the resources to, again, as we all have been saying, lighten the load of our local police department. They deal with way too many things, and I think this is an opportunity to also create jobs within the city with a task force. Maybe with returning citizens, those zip codes that are experiencing the highest amount of gun violence. Imagine putting brooms and dustpans in their hands and telling them, like, okay, how about you clean your own neighborhood for $17 an hour for 40 hours a week, making them city employees and giving them the power and the resources to put the guns down and pick the brooms up, while at the same time cleaning their own neighborhoods that they're initially killing each other in. And then the second thing is that I do believe in the power of the cameras. When Nick first explained to me about the AI that they were creating, as I think about the 80 cleanups that I have organized and the 275 tons of trash that I've picked up over the time of the last 2 years in Philadelphia, I can think about 50 spots that could use that technology to that. It's a broken cycle. Every time I do a cleanup, 3 weeks later, I'm getting a phone call. Can you come back? And I'm like, we just removed 10 tons. Why do I need to come back? Well, again, no enforcement, and there's no task force monitoring or sweeping through. I know Sherelle Parker's wants more beat cops and more bike cops. Imagine if we had bike cops biking through illegal dumps, known illegal dump spots. And I remember on the radio one time, I remember the streets department said that they had a list of well-known illegal dump spots. And I was just wondering if they would ever think about sharing that list with community leaders like myself, the Big Philly Cleanup, Cobbs Creek, some other neighborhood organizations, that if we had the list, we can then use volunteer power. The power of volunteers is so strong when it comes to illegal dumping that I honestly think that you could get Philadelphia to clean itself for free, because it's such an issue in every single neighborhood, especially the brown and black ones, that you could use a community organizer like myself and Circular Philadelphia like Nick and other organizations to galvanize Philadelphia to clean itself up, and then educate people on why we must keep it clean. I mean, I say all the time, when I was growing up, the saying was, give a hoot, don't pollute. And it was everywhere. We had those campaigns in schools, on city buses, on billboards, on commercials. And the way social media is now, imagine what these children could do if the city were to task them with creating a recycling campaign with TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and you have mural arts. You have kids designing trash cans now to be placed on every corner and city streets. So as a community organizer, and as I talk to community, there is an enormous want and need, but also fire and passion for this city to be clean. And I think the volunteerism is untapped, and I also think that designating employment to people who could be a task force to add to the effects and add to the already goings-ons of the streets department and city government, I do believe that we all would say yes to a clean Philadelphia, and we would say yes sooner rather than later. So thank you. That is my time. I want to again give an enormous amount of admiration, and I'm really inspired by the work that Councilmember Gautier is doing with the Just Services PHL and with the bill before this. It really gives hope to someone who's in community all the time, talking to residents, talking to community leaders, talking to block captains, trying to figure out how do we get our kids to not normalize living in filth. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. And your enthusiasm is definitely contagious. I don't get excited about people testifying. Member Goodyear will tell you I keep it even keel. But when I saw you, I got excited about some of the work that you're doing, and thank you for that. I got to borrow them up in the 4th District a little bit there, Member Goodyear. But do you have any questions for him, Member?
I don't have questions. I just wanted to thank Yafei for his advocacy, for the amazing platform that he's built. That's all about having our residents know that they deserve to live in clean and safe communities. And somehow you've also made that message really cool and interesting too. So thank you for all that you do, and thanks for being here today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
I believe Mr. Harris is next.
Good evening, good afternoon. This is Mark Frog Harris, President of Cathedral Park CDC&A. I have a few comments I'd like to make. First one, there was previous testimony that we can't arrest our way out of the problem. That's true, but one of the problems we have is there are too few arrests, and very rarely do vehicles get confiscated. That would make a difference if there was some fear of this actually happening, but there isn't any significant fear because there's such rare events. When vehicles observed dumping, oftentimes they're U-Hauls or rental vehicles, and they're difficult to identify. It's not easy to see a license plate, particularly since the rear of the vehicles, usually where the dumping is happening. One thing the City Council could do is to pass an ordinance mandating that all rental trucks be conspicuously marked at both the front and the rear with a unit number, so that when they're spotted, when they're seen on cameras, they can be traced back to the renter, and some fines can be imposed. One problem I've observed, not mentioned here, is that a number of dumps, particularly the larger ones, require a municipal waste permit in order to dump. This should not be. It's a barrier to people trying to lawfully dispose of their waste. Obviously, the council can't change that, but it could be pushed for, that all dumps are available to anyone who wishes to come in and pay the appropriate fees. We do have a sweep block officers, and they try to do a good job, but sometimes they're a little lacking in judgment. They hammer the wrong person, the person who's dumped on, as opposed to seeking the one who's doing the dumping. If they were to coordinate with local RCOs and block captains, they could do a much more effective job, and the iniquities that happen sometimes when people get hammered who don't deserve it could be avoided. Lastly, the city is part of the city's policies for picking up trash from the curb are part of the problem. If a person puts out a little bit of sheetrock or a 2x4 or something that looks like construction material with trash, the city's policy is no, we don't take construction material. And that will cause the trash to be left behind. And then the resident who's tried to properly put out their trash, being frustrated, may do what Philadelphians do. They dump. They've tried to do what they thought was right, and they become a victim of the city's policies. And mattresses, another one. We see lots of mattresses dumped. It's understood that it was a bed bug concern, but the consequences are much worse. Mattresses are dumped all over the place, and it costs $5 or so, plus some effort in order to get a plastic cover for a mattress. And it's something a lot of people are not willing to do and or certainly don't want to spend the money. I think the policy of requiring mattresses be wrapped in plastic is well intended, but over the top. The negative consequences are too great. And clean out. Sometimes, people vacate, they move out, and they may put a large quantity of furniture, etc., to the curb. And sometimes it doesn't get picked up because it's a large quantity. But the bottom line should be that the city's policy should be, if it comes out to the curb, it should get picked up. If there's a reason that the person should be paying a fee or a fine, a supervisor should come out, make an assessment, and the trash should disappear. It should not be left on the curb. Because that just encourages people to do dumping, which we all recognize is a major problem. Any questions?
No. So thank you for your testimony. Appreciate that. I believe Ms. Love is next. Ms. Love, are you there? Are you connected? Ms. Love? I do not hear.
I actually think it's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you're about to take over the chair, the chair as we speak. So.
Okay. We wanted to move Controller Reinhardt up before we finished the rest of the community panel.
Okay. Ms. Reinhardt, are you there?
I am here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Council Chair Jones and Council Member Gauthier. I appreciate
Gauthier now.
Gauthier. Thank you for moving me up, and good afternoon, Council Member Jones, Council Member Gauthier, and other members of the Committee on Public Safety. I am Rebecca Reinhardt, Philadelphia City Controller. And I'm here to provide testimony today on resolution number 220232 regarding illegal dumping in Philadelphia. Beginning in 2019, my office has been analyzing our city's gun violence crisis, including its impact, the solutions, and how we got to where we are today. We have also worked to provide information on equity in service delivery, looking at whether or not city services are reaching residents across the city equitably and fairly. Transparency around how services are being delivered is incredibly important, as we need to understand the problem clearly in order to fix it. These issues, both our city's gun violence and how the city delivers services, are connected, as they do not affect all of our neighborhoods equally. Neighborhoods across the city have suffered from disinvestment for decades as a result of racist-sponsored programs in our government, like redlining. And these neighborhoods continue to see higher levels of gun violence and disadvantage. Recently, I joined Councilmember Gauthier in West Philly to discuss these issues, recognizing that there are 14 zip codes that in 2021 had 78% of shooting victims. That's 14 zip codes out of about 48 zip codes across the city. And using 2021 data from 311 and L&I complaints, we found that the same 14 zip codes had much higher percentages of certain quality of life complaints, especially compared to Center City. For example, when looking at these 14 zip codes, they accounted for 59% of total illegal dumping complaints, compared to just 3.1% in Center City. 45% of total missed sanitation collection complaints, compared to 2.6% in Center City. 57% of abandoned vehicle complaints, compared to 0.4% in Center City. And 68% of vacant lot complaints, compared to 0.2% in Center City. Last fall, my office also released a review of on-time trash collection, finding that Center City and Northeast Philadelphia had better on-time trash collection rates than other neighborhoods, like West Philadelphia, Northwest Philly, and South Philadelphia. Our analysis showed that before the pandemic, in the few years leading up to the pandemic, Center City and Northeast Philly had collection rates above 90%. while West Philadelphia, Northwest Philadelphia, and South Philly had collection rates on-time collection rates in the 65 to 75% range. This is not right. These are issues of racial justice, and our government must do more to fix this and to reverse the years of systemic racism that led us here and to better support our communities. I believe that in order to fix the problems, we need to understand them. This is why my office is committed to making data like this available and accessible. And addressing illegal dumping and the resulting consequences is an important step in helping to uplift Philadelphia's neighborhoods that have been neglected for far too long. So thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Controller Reinhardt, for this work, and just thank you for being such a great partner around this issue of gun violence in our city and on the issue of equitable city services. I'm interested in knowing, have you ever received a response from anyone in the administration to either the data that you originally gathered about trash collection or this new data about 311 service call disparities?
We have not received any proactive communication about these issues from the mayor's administration, from the mayor's office, and I thank you for your partnership in this, and I think I share your concern and urgency that there should be much more immediate action from the mayor's administration to fix this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you making this data available, and I hope that we take the opportunity to use it to serve our residents in a more equitable way. I don't have any more questions, but I wanted to make space for other members of the committee to ask questions if they have them. Thank you, Controller Reinhardt. I know you have another engagement you have to get to soon.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I'll continue to work on this.
Thank you. Ms. Sherrills, can you call the next witness to testify?
Yes, we'll have Shari Hirsch and then Michael Allegretti.
Okay. Ms. Hirsch, are you there and connected?
Yes.
Wonderful. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
I'm Shari Hirsch, and I'm from Trash Academy. And I have a presentation with me. Thank you for showing it. We have been working in Fairhill and Kensington for the last couple of years. I don't know if there's any way to make, yeah. And that poster right there was made this fall. This is one little block on East Westmoreland Street, and you can see the right-hand side. That's just what one resident is working and fighting against and cleaning up in a 1 month time. This is a historically dumped on site, and what this points to is, of course, what's been mentioned before, the repetition. The work is never done, people clean up, and it happens again and again. So we're going to go to the next slide, and we did a deep dive into dumping. We did it with 15 people, including some of the folks here today, like Terrell Hagler and Nick Esposito. And we went through drywall. In the 2019 Litter Index, drywall is one of the most dumped items. Next slide. So we looked at it through this, we went all the way around drywall, and this is the group, this is the Team NAS at ASE that we've been working with, and on the right there we are digging through a waste transfer station materials. Next slide. This is the poster. It's out today. It's in the Grid magazine. It's an insert. And we went all the way around from looking at the material and what happens at the beginning to why it becomes dumped, what could prevent dumping. And we look at it we're looking at it the whole way around, like education and awareness, prevention, abatement, and enforcement. We see holes all the way around in the system that need to be addressed. Next slide. I just want to focus on this one. Nick mentioned this. See the map in the center of Philly? The red squares are where they use heavy equipment to pick up. Those are dumped sites. The dark red line is the redlining map. So you have the little red squares. That's what requires heavy machinery. If you look, this is disproportionately in Black and brown and marginalized neighborhoods. And it was mentioned before, there's an unjust accumulated burdens in these neighborhoods. And we could look at the crime map, the asthma map. We can do the heat impacts and health impacts and poverty all fit on the redlining map in Philadelphia. That's the 1934 redlining map. This is about accumulated burdens that are really unfair. And what I want to also point out in this one is that green circle, the people who are doing the cleanup, I have a clip here in the CDCs, but I want to point out the block captains because in the maps of the worst dump neighborhoods, the cleanest blocks are being cleaned by block captains who tend to be BIPOC women over 40. So not only is this in certain neighborhoods, it is also unfairly on the backs of older women who are doing cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. And we did slip in here this one thing that's also been mentioned is if an area is cleaned, the full treatment, so that then neighbors feel safe using the spaces and actually animate the spaces, there's a 29% decrease in gun violence. So when we dip into this stuff, we're looking not only at the problems, but at the solutions. And, we just want to see some of that money go around on all the different aspects that might prevent dumping. So let's just go to the next slide. We just want you to get a sense of the magnitude of drywall. There's 21 million tons produced a year in the United States, and 13.2 million are being landfilled or incinerated. Next slide. So it's a huge problem. Drywall is at the end of a clean out or remodel, and it's not reaching a ton. Like if you take your family car or a truck to go dump it, it's going to be maybe 100 pounds, way, way, way below. And it's also very cheap to put up. So instead of deconstructing our houses and capturing all those amazing materials, because we have this beautiful old housing stock in Philly, we are actually part of the drive of the building boom is about the cheapness of both the labor and the material, and then the magnitude of waste that is actually going on our streets and going in our landfill and being incinerated instead of captured. Let's go to the next slide. We did a very, very deep dive, and I'm only showing you a few slides. I just wanted to show this thing that Nick mentioned, which is the tipping fee. So the small haulers do not have to have a Pennsylvania waste transporter authorization. So the big ones, 10,000, 17,000, if they're carrying a trailer, they are regulated. The small ones, the entrepreneurial ones, the vans, the pickup trucks, the box trucks, they might have a commercial activity license, but they're not licensed in any other way. There's no accountability, and it's very not cost effective for them to dump legally. Next slide. We'd like to see more deconstruction. We'd like to see the materials separated. We'd like to know where our waste is going. We want everyone to step up and find out. That dumping paper that the developers have to submit, no one ever audits it. So we're really excited to see in this proposal that L&I gets more money. We need to close the loop on these things. So if we deconstruct and we create feedstock, if we start asking for the dumping receipt and requiring it, we start to close the loop. Next slide. And I just want to show you this last slide. Like if the feeds, if we're deconstructing, if we're capturing materials, then all those little entrepreneurs that are potentially dumping illegally, they're actually creating a service and capturing those materials that can then be reused. And if we were to allow them to dump and pay a fee at a convenience center, they would also eliminate them using vacant lots. We'd like to see them licensed, just like getting a driver's license, so you can pull their license if they're caught. And we would also like to see on the building permits that before they can, the developer can get their certificate of occupancy, they have to produce the receipts for the legal dumping. So there's lots and lots of ways we could reconfigure some of that illegal dumping into holding on to materials, into dumping legally, into recycling, and into a better entrepreneurial position that doesn't exploit the environment. I think that's the last one I did. I might have two more, like maybe just showing you the overview of the poster. That's the backside of the poster where people can access how to deconstruct. And then the campaign that we're starting to end dumping in Philly, which is there's a QR code, and we are like the plastic bag campaign. We're going to gather people to, we want to provide the citizen support for whatever city council proposes so we can move to close the loop on these things. Because when we did this deep dive, that's the group of people who did it at the waste transfer station, we were shocked that when we discovered that it could be solved, that it doesn't have to be the way it is, because I think we've all lived with this, oh my God, what do we do? Because it's not just enforcement, it's not just cleanup, we have to prevent it and we have to educate. You know, I love Terrell's idea of the kids doing TikToks and Reels and stuff like that. Would be great. So thank you for letting me show our hard work, the folks in Kensington and the folks who did the deep dive into drywall as a point of entry into dumping.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hirsch. Thank you for your work and for the work of Mural Arts to beautify our neighborhoods, not just with art, but also in helping to alleviate this dumping issue. We really appreciate you and all that you do, and we want to support and highlight your campaign. So thanks so much for being here today. Mr. Allegretti, are you there and connected?
Yes, how are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for being here today. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Absolutely, thank you. My name is Michael Allegretti. Well, esteemed members of the Philadelphia City Council, Chairman Jones, Vice Chair Johnson, thank you for inviting me to testify today. We're honored to share our perspective about how the City of Philadelphia could use technology specifically to help reduce illegal dumping across the city, and in so doing, build a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all Philadelphians. Founded over a decade ago, Rubicon is a digital marketplace for waste and recycling. We interact with some of the organizations that testified earlier today, and we provide innovative software solutions to businesses and governments. We manage the waste and recycling portfolios for many of the nation's biggest brands, 7-Eleven, Best Buy, Dollar General, Starbucks, as an example. But we also work with dozens of U.S. cities, from Houston and Kansas City to Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Memphis, Spokane, and Scranton, Pennsylvania, here in this state. We're also a certified B Corporation. I'll explain why that's relevant in a moment, meaning we're part of a third-party certification process that verifies that we meet the highest social and environmental performance standards. And we're committed to our mission, which is to end waste. So we're a waste management company committed to ending waste. And while we focus on helping our customers reduce the physical waste that they send to landfills, including illegally dumped waste, we're equally focused on helping them eliminate other forms of waste, such as wasted time, wasted tax dollars, wasted human capacity, wasted public labor. And so it's really a holistic look at what it means to end waste. 5 years ago, we launched our software solution for municipalities. It's called Rubicon Smart City. And it's a technology platform specifically designed to help city governments run faster, smarter, and more effective waste recycling and fleet operations. It's built on Amazon Web Services. It's a cloud-based solution, and it's flexible technology that's secure, reliable, but also really intuitive for those frontline workers that I believe Councilmember Gilmore Richardson noted earlier today. To date, Rubicon Smart City has been rolled out in over 75 cities. So what is the tech? We have a patented smartphone app that helps city governments track service delivery metrics such as where a vehicle is, the completion of a route, and real-time service verification. Our technology also empowers drivers to relay issues as they happen in the field. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. And document important information such as contamination and recycling, inaccessible service locations, and for the purpose of this hearing, illegal dumping. The technology can provide navigation, route information, transit time estimates, truck fall codes, and the list goes on and on. All of this is fed directly back to a secure website. Think of that as a nerve center for the department, in this case, the streets department, that supervisors can then use to evaluate, course correct in real time. We call that our portal. We equip these vehicles, though, and I want to just take a step back and think of the garbage truck for a moment. We equip these vehicles specifically, which go up and down every single street in every single city at least once a week, with additional capabilities to look for critical infrastructure and quality of life issues that plague communities. And I think so many of the witnesses and council members have quite eloquently talked about these social and equity issues associated with where trash piles up. These are the things that, if left unaddressed, go from being a nuisance to a problem and now to a crisis. And those photos at the start of this part of the hearing were jarring to see. One of these issues is, of course, illegal dumping. It has widespread impact on the public's health and safety. And, you just have to think of a couple illegally discarded tires. They send a signal to the community that it is okay to dump tires in this given spot. Next thing one knows, a couple of tires has become a pile of tires, and we saw a photo of that before. Hundreds and hundreds of tires. The impact on that neighborhood is real, but also the cost to remove that pile is enormous. And it means that the streets department has to divert resources from day-to-day core services to picking up the pile of tires. This leads to a diminished core solid waste and recycling collection service for all Philadelphians, regardless of zip code. So since there's essentially no other vehicle that's traversing the entire city every day on a fixed route, making incremental stops, the garbage truck, we believe, is uniquely positioned to serve as a city's eyes and ears for important community issues, just like illegal dumping. With a tap of a button, drivers can note the exact location of those uncollected tires or mattresses or any other illegally dumped item. This information with our technology can then be automatically relayed to the portal, where in-office staff can view it, analyze trends, and most importantly, action cleanup activity, whether it's in the streets department, police department, or elsewhere. Using our routing software, supervisors can add these jobs to existing routes, provided they have the right sort of vehicle out at that time, to optimize the operation and save tax dollars, all while providing drivers with navigation to pick up material in the most efficient manner possible. Every mile counts, every gallon of fuel counts, every hour of overtime counts to get tax savings. So really driving efficiency in the operation is as important as knowing where the illegally dumped items are. So if a city can identify illegally dumped materials before they spread and before a resident calls to complain about them, well, then that city, in this case Philadelphia, goes from being in the business of delivering reactive government to delivering proactive public service. And surely that's the gold standard we're all striving for. Many of our city partners have utilized our tech for similar problems plaguing their communities. And surely some of these issues probably are also in Philadelphia. In the city of Santa Fe, the Environmental Services Division asked its drivers to flag graffiti around the city for a 3-week time period. At the end of that initiative, the city had a list of graffiti locations, and then a different department within the city was able to systematically address those graffiti hotspots prior to citizens calling in to complain about them, or even worse, prior to before the problem would really grow. In the city of Glendale, the city's street sweepers are systematically noting overgrown branches, broken street signs, and litter. And that city similarly is utilizing this data to address those problems and share that information with appropriate stakeholders across departments. So in many ways, this sort of technology solution also helps to bust silos internally within a government. At Rubicon, we're always pushing the bounds, but I want to be clear that we recognize that asking a driver to note an issue is not always possible. So we've looked to automate this process as well. Our latest product, called Rubicon Vision, is a front-facing camera, meaning it faces out of the truck, not at the driver. And so to be clear, there is no driver-facing component. It looks out of the front windshield, and it's kind of a cutting-edge smart city sort of application. The device can look for and record different community insights while the vehicles are en route with no interaction and only looking for that specific thing. So we use artificial intelligence, which has been referenced a few times today, and machine learning to automatically identify items like potholes or overflowing bins, and then sends those images, it pins them rather, to the nearest household address utilizing longitude and latitude, and then puts it back in the portal. Now, Rubicon Vision can be trained to look for almost anything with enough time and with the right city partnership. Illegal dumping is one such item that we're very interested in co-developing alongside the right city partner. But to be completely transparent, this is not a small undertaking due to the complexity of illegal dumping. For example, it's difficult to determine if something has been illegally placed somewhere or just happens to be a large pile of garbage in a location. But we can solve for that by noting where trash should be and where it shouldn't be. But it is an extra step. It's how we've developed models to date, including potholes, overflowing bins, material contamination, through partnership with cities that want to get serious about a problem like this. Our focus has always been on this most essential but overlooked function of government, solid waste collection, picking up the garbage. So smart, efficient, reliable service is not only critical for resident satisfaction, it's essential for public health, for city cleanliness, and even for addressing climate change, which we haven't really talked about too much today. But as cities strive to meet zero waste goals, there is a positive climate impact by keeping materials out of landfills. On top of all of this, really as a final point, the pandemic has exposed, certainly for our company, and I think for your city and others, that no matter what happens, cities must collect the trash. The pandemic has made this so clear, and historically all residents, and this has been said many times, have not had access to equitable government services. Zip codes have mattered, and we believe that that's wrong. Rubicon Smart City can help cities like Philadelphia address this inequity by putting the power of data in the hands of city decision makers, and really specifically the men and women who lead great departments like the Streets Department to action immediate on-the-ground changes. With that, I want to thank you for inviting me to testify, and I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Councilman Johnson, just want to say I'm present.
Thank you so much, Council Member. Thank you so much for that testimony. I know that you're not currently set up to address illegal dumping with your technology, but you think you can get there pretty quickly. Do you have a sense of what the cost of that type of technology and program would be for a city like Philadelphia?
Absolutely. So what I can say is that our pricing is public. We're on the Sourcewell Purchasing Consortium as well as the HGAC buy, so it's completely out into the open. But to give you 3 reference points, if it's helpful, the city of Houston, which is in many ways probably analogous to Philly in terms of population, we have a 3-year contract there that's about $2.7 million total over 3 years. But in the city of Scranton, which is obviously much smaller, but certainly similar in some ways, over 3 years, that's $165,000. So what I want to be clear about is that developing something like a new model for illegal dumping, we're not in the business of charging cities for that. What we do is we charge cities to use our technology, and then if they want to dig in with us and help co-develop something, that's wonderful, and that's just a kind of an added benefit of working with us.
And the way it would work that we would put your technology on our existing vehicles, or you would supply us with vehicles?
Yes, ma'am. We would put our technology on your existing vehicles. No need for you to get more vehicles. They're expensive enough as it is. And it's a point of an important point about our tech. It's an app, so it's a smartphone or a tablet. It's a telematics device. It's an outward-facing camera. We don't have tech that we kind of bolt into your trucks the way a lot of other companies do. And it's constantly updated with every new app release, just like, I don't know, your Seamless app or something like that you have on your phone.
Okay. And what steps would you need to take your technology from something that's addressing general infrastructure issues to illegal dumping? What steps would you need to take, and how long would that take?
Well, we're able to launch our tech in cities generally in 90 days or less. We're very proud of that. So we get the stuff in your trucks very quickly. And then it becomes an exercise of working with relevant stakeholders in the city, many of whom I think I've met in listening to this testimony, to usually chart out a pilot area. So we learn first before we go citywide somewhere, identify the illegal dumping hotspots that everyone on this call already knows, and then get our trucks or your trucks to run those routes and start to identify those through repetition. Basically, the way these AI models work is you feed them more and more images of illegal dumping, and the model learns that the thing it's seeing is illegal dumping versus regularly dumped trash. Generally, we build these models over the course of a year. They are never done, though, and I think it's an important point to make. A model can always get better, right? So every time you put another photo into it, it gets a little smarter. So getting to what I'd call kind of a minimally viable product is probably a number of months after launch. Let's call it a 6-month period. And then getting to kind of something that's truly best in class, you're probably doing that over the balance of the year.
Thank you so much for the innovation that you've brought to this area and for being here today. I love the idea of our city moving to a place where we are being proactive about dumping, as opposed to having a system that waits for people to kind of call complaints in. So thank you so much for sharing this innovation with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm quite honored.
I do want to ask if other members of the committee have questions for you as well. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Williams, are you there and connected?
I am still here and connected. Yes, I am.
Thank you so much. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Gautier and members of the Public Safety Committee. My name is Carlton Williams, and I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Streets. I'm here today to offer testimony on Resolution Number 220232. As you know, illegal dumping is a quality of life issue that negatively affects many of our communities. It is normally ranked high in the city's resident surveys of most pressing issues facing our city. It contributes to the decrease in property values and neighborhood appearance and can lead to increased crime. Illegal dumping is not only a detriment to our communities, but also places a financial burden on the city. The Streets Department spends $1.8 million annually in cleaning and removing illegally dumped materials. Construction debris and other discarded items such as mattresses, tires, and televisions are dumped in places like vacant lots, desolate corridors, and under bridges. The Streets Department crews proactively monitor up to 130 dumping sites throughout the city on a daily basis. Crews proactively address locations frequently requested to be serviced from using data from our 311 system. Unfortunately, many of these locations have to be addressed repeatedly within weeks or at sometimes days, as offenders use these sites to constantly dump debris. The department delivers these services equitably throughout the city, routing vehicles to address known hotspots in all sections of the city. Streets Department services tend to be skewed more towards challenged neighborhoods, as they are more frequently littered and continually dumped on after they have been serviced, which in many cases is due to vacant land and having more transient populations. More organized neighborhoods tend to receive less services due to lesser of those challenges. We're committed to equitable distribution of services in order to create a cleaner city for all Philadelphians. In 2021, the department removed over 7,171 tons of illegally dumped material from over 1,309 sites and an estimated 83,600 tires. In the previous year, in 2020, the department removed over 6,300 tons of illegally dumped materials and 2,100 sites of estimated 30,000 tires. During the pandemic, the city of Philadelphia experienced significant increases in illegal dumping. With more people spending more time at home due to stay-at-home orders and more home deliveries of food and household goods and trash, collection in tons increased 20% during the fiscal year of 2022. Although we are improving to see an increase in the percentage of trash tonnage collected on time this fiscal year compared to pre-pandemic levels. Many of these materials are being improperly disposed of outside of the home, as we have seen increase in residential trash being illegally dumped on neighborhood corners, under bridges, and in other remote sites. This dumping has resulted in $8.3 million in increased disposal costs during the fiscal year 2020-21, and a projected $3.9 million increase during the course of fiscal year 2022 compared to pre-pandemic levels. During the early phase of the pandemic, we had to temporarily suspend our sweep enforcement efforts while police had to suspend arrests for illegal dumping. This break had a significant impact on illegal dumping because, as we know, enforcement plays a key role in minimizing illegal dumping and improper trash sellouts and other quality of life issues. While our sweep officers have returned to full deployment, violators have become more brazen in their acts, and the amount of illegally dumped material continues to be widespread across the city. To date, we have over 188 cameras that have been installed for illegal dumping, with an additional 80 purchased and waiting for installation, which we expect will be online next month. We have seen success at many locations where we've had placed these cameras, less dumping being disposed of at many of these hotspots. We continue to install cameras in known hotspots, but dumpers are becoming more savvier by covering their face or license tags and moving their other locations to dump once they realize they're being recorded. We continue to work with the Philadelphia Police Department, environmental crimes detectives, the Inspector General's office, licenses and inspection, and the District Attorney's office to identify cases for prosecution. In 2021, there were over 220 assignments, 13 code violations, 4 warrants, and 1 arrest. The city has also convened the Cleaner Public Spaces Enforcement Committee to combat this dumping and is made up of several intergovernmental agencies. The committee recently developed a process by which streets will issue notices of violation in addition to CVNs for illegal dumping. NOVs allow for higher rates of fine up to $5,000 and have the authority to charge violators for cleaning the remediation costs. We have also increased avenues for civil prosecution, which continue to pursue criminal prosecution for large dumps and CVNs for smaller violations. Each of these tactics play a small role in our efforts to keep our neighborhoods safe, clean, and beautiful. In fiscal year 2023, the department requested $2 million for 2 additional short dump crews that will span several areas to address illegal dumping. Each crew consists of 11 members. Currently, the department has only 1 illegal dumping crew that is responsible for collecting and disposing illegally dumped trash throughout the city. The absence of a more robust program means that illegal dumping collections are primarily addressed in a response to residents and business complaints and opposed to a more strategic approach based upon need. Staffing several areas of the city will provide more comprehensive processes that focuses on those areas more objectively and that are impacted. While departments' efforts are ongoing, we all play a role in keeping the city clean, and there must be an active participation and personal responsibility to maintain and sustain cleaning efforts. This effort, along with increased enforcement from the city, will help to achieve a cleaner city. The 15th annual Philly Spring Cleanup took place on April 2nd, 2022. This is our signature event that serves as the city's largest cleanup event that takes place citywide in a single day. This year, we're celebrating 15 years of partnerships with community groups. Over 400 community projects were registered as part of this year's event. The Streets Department is also part of an interagency committee of city departments to develop strategies and practical and legal enforceable tactics to hold offenders accountable. Legislation has been developed to hold violators accountable through increased accountability for dumpers those that hire dumpers. Those legislation intends to charge dumpers with cleanup costs and will increase fines for dumpers, and we hope council will pass the ordinance which will comes in front of you in order to have this additional tool to deter dumpers. Phase 2 of the expansion of the city's mechanical cleaning program runs from April 4th through November 30th in 14 areas identified as having the highest concentrations of litter. Mechanical sweeping utilizes a hybrid approach consisting of backpack blowers, hand brooms to remove sidewalk and curb debris, mechanical brooms, and trash compactors to capture larger illegally dumped items. The program is supported by sweep officers who issue tickets, and we continue to work with community to address litter trash and illegal dumping through education and enforcement. We held several community meetings to inform residents of those in those neighborhoods affected by the program and continue to ask residents to move their cars. We look forward to expanding that program as well into the near future. Illegal dumping is one of the most pressing quality of life issues that we face as a city. The department will continue to work with council and community to address problems that we seek solutions to make Philadelphia a cleaner, greener, and safer city. Thank you for the opportunity to appear for you today. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. There is a brief 6-slide presentation that I want to highlight that was in the presentation that will show you, if I can share it. Can everyone see that?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. How about now?
No. Ms. Sherles, do we need to do something on our end for the commissioner to share a presentation?
No, he is a presenter, but hold on, I'll pull.
Okay.
And due to the time constraints, I can start taking questions if the presentation is not available.
Madam Chair?
Yes. I wanted to, council member, do you mind if I start off with just some opening comments?
I have to jump off, but can I do a quick one if you don't mind, Madam Chair?
I'm just going to 20 seconds and then I'll let you jump in. It's very important that I let the commissioner know that I'm not here to attack him. I want to start off by thanking you, right? You and your team, including Deputy Commissioner Warren, all of the team working in sweeps. We appreciate you guys. You are always very responsive to us. You always do your best to help us. But it is very clear to us that you don't have the resources that you need to address an issue that is as large scale as illegal dumping is in the city of Philadelphia. So I want you to know that this hearing is about figuring out what we need to do to get you those resources and to be an advocate for you. So I just want to make that very clear.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman Gautier. We appreciate that and appreciate your support, especially during this resolution.
Okay. Councilmember Johnson.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm echoing the same thing that Madam Chair just said. I want to thank Commissioner Carlton Williams and also specifically Keith Warren just for being responsive, especially in the southwest part of my district. I can attest to the millions of tires, the debris that's being removed out in the back of Eastwick. Like one night and the next day, there's still illegal dumping. And so I just want to echo the sentiments of my colleague, Councilman Jamie Gaudier, in terms of this is about seeing how we can be supportive of your efforts, but really taking them to the next level. And I remember there was a program, not Power Core, but what's the program that used to clean up the alleyways? Right?
Future Track.
And y'all go fix the lights.
It was Future Track.
And
yes.
So I just want to echo again that, and I talked to Michael DeBardinas when he was here, like, why won't we just, as a city, we know gun violence is a major issue, hire like 1,000 young people, right, to do nothing but work in the Future Track program, work with us in addressing illegal dumping, work with work with us in cleaning up alleyways, which is now a public safety issue, right? But also intertwine it with an educational campaign just to teach not only this generation and the next generation about the importance of not illegal dumping or littering, but also having a culture of cleanliness is next to godliness for the city of Philadelphia as a whole. And so hopefully we can engage in some type of cleaning campaign from that aspect. And I think we have some in a variety of different approaches, because I have seen some in the past, like recycling and the points you get for recycling, which I think is great. But at the end of the day, I just want to acknowledge you for your hard work and Chief Warren for his hard work and the streets team as a whole. And we want to back your play in terms of helping taking this issue to the next level in terms of preventing people. Because I know it's frustrating when you say, Councilman, we just went out there last night and we cleaned up mattresses and sofas under Grays Avenue. You know what that said, Jamie, where our district borders one another. And then you come out like 2 days later and it's still illegal dumping. And so I believe that people that do not respect our city and illegally dump should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. If you don't want to take your debris to the dump because you know you have to pay for it, especially contractors, you should be banned from doing business with the city of Philadelphia forever. Not a fine, not a suspension, but you should be banned for doing business in the city of Philadelphia as a whole, because you're taking advantage of our community. And so with that being said, Madam Chair, as always, this is a great topic for us to zero in on, and just thank you for putting this out in the forefront.
Absolutely. Thank you. Commissioner, do you want to go ahead with the presentation, or do you want to go with the questions?
Thank you, Sydney, for getting this up and running. I'll just cue you to change the slide. I think you can handle it from where you are, from your location, since mine wasn't operating. So, Council Member and Chairperson Gautier, we talked about earlier in my presentation what are some of the changes that the City of Philadelphia is embarking to try to address this major issue. We do use data, and I want to share some of that data with you today to show you some of the things that we track so that we can try to identify. And also, I would be remiss to say that we use tools like the Litter Index, and we've been using this since actually 2009 to target our most vulnerable areas when it came down to things like illegal dumping. And so that's where many of our programs are actually addressed and shaped. So if we can go on to the first slide, Sydney, and thank you so much for getting this up for us. I really appreciate it. So here's data from R311. This is recent data from March 2022. It tracks illegal dumping on vacant lots and dumping on grounds maintenance, which is in our parks and recreation areas. The blue represents non-heavy equipment illegal dumping. This is your household trash, and I think the question was asked earlier, can you identify different types of illegal dumping that occurs in the city of Philadelphia? The department does track that through our 311 system as well. We look at things like, does it require heavy equipment? Is this household trash? Majority of it, as you can see, is household trash in the city of Philadelphia. We had over 1,882 complaints in the month of March that have mainly dealt with people dumping trash on corners and those mattresses that Mr. Harris talked about earlier in lots. And all of those challenges that we face, these are the type of complaints that we service. While it's not the significant portion, it's still a major factor for heavy equipment illegal dumping, because these are the things that are most challenging for us to address when people are illegally dumping contractor debris, business tires. All of those things are captured in that data. And we also capture it by zip code. So you can see the various zip codes that we have in this location: 19134, 19140, 19144, 19121, 19132, and 1913304, and the rest all the way down to 31 are the most heavily dumped on areas in the city of Philadelphia. So what do we do with that data? We take that information, we try to respond to those requests as quickly as possible. The additional crews that we're getting support from our budget is very helpful, because we can then take those crews and address those areas that are in greatest need. Again, from an equity lens, these are the problems that we currently have to deal with in our neighborhoods, and we're using our resources to target those effectively. The next slide, please. So this is a comparison from March through April. And as you can see, the number of heavy equipment illegal dumping, that is your major dump sites, has increased, while the overall number of short dumps from our residential dumping has decreased. So we're down to 1,400. It was 1,800, but you're seeing an increase and a huge spike in illegal dumping. And that's consistent with, you know, people being out more this time of the year. The weather is changing, people doing more work, and they're actually, unfortunately, dumping in areas and reporting this, which is a good thing they're reporting it. The unfortunate part is that it's continuously happening. And so, again, this data is being utilized to address those areas that are commonly dumped on the most. This is how we developed our process for identifying 130 sites each day for we routine and proactively check where they're dumping on in the city. So we're not waiting for people to call in those areas. We use the data for people who place those calls, but now we're checking it on a proactively basis in hopes that we're reducing. And we're starting to see the numbers decrease. The numbers are also decreasing in household residential dumping because I'm happy to report over the last 4 or 5 months that trash collection citywide is up over 96%. And so this is in large due to post-pandemic relief that we actually received. Thank you, City Council, for the additional staff and support that we needed in order to get us back on track. We're now at a 96% on average rate across the entire city of Philadelphia. The numbers for recycling are a bit less, but they're even and equitable in all neighborhoods. So these are the things that we're doing differently. And what have we done lately in terms of trash and recycling collection? We added an evening crew. So this way, trash that's not collected on regular time between the hours of 7 to 3 will not be left overnight until the next day, because we will have an evening shift to collect it. And any debris that's collected early, those crews will be put on cleaning to address areas that we're having, that we talked about and that you illustrated today in your presentations. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we talked about, and it was mentioned today, was environmental case tracking. While it was definitely a great idea to be able to work with the police department and have someone finally address illegal dumping cases, because in the past we didn't have a detective that was dedicated. So I want to thank the police department and Detective Flacco for his support. But unfortunately, one person is not enough for the entire city. We need more support. We need different tactics. Here's some of the caseloads that we've actually received. The PPD has actually received and addressed this year. If you can turn to attention row 3 and 4, which it says active and inactive cases. So in January, we received 11 cases that are actively being pursued for investigation and prosecution, February 12, and March 7. So we have 30 cases that are currently active that we're looking to prosecute for cases. Inactive cases are cases that there was not enough evidence or support to be able to track those cases. And that's 50% of people who are able to dump illegally in the city and get away with these issues. And so we need to come up with a system to not only address the ones that we do catch and there is evidence, but we need to also come up with a system to be able to address those that are not. And we think we have it. Next slide, please. So this shows the case process for cases that actually come through and how they get to actual court. So there's various ways in which a complaint can come in through the city of Philadelphia. It can be reported by a department. It can be reported by L&I, Parks and Recreation, which is receiving a lot of dumping in our waterlets and inways and around our river streams from PWD, Philadelphia Water Department. Residents make up the bulk of the complaints, and of course the streets department. It all goes into one location, which is currently right now at the Philadelphia Police Department, and which is managed again by, who's doing a great job, Detective Flacco, who's also then works to determine which cases are eligible to be given to the district attorney's office to end up in court. Now, while the number of cases that we have has increased over the years, including the past couple of years ago, it's still a fraction of the amount of dumping that's occurring in the city. I just mentioned last month alone, there were over 300 cases, and we only are prosecuting only 30 cases. So there's a need for additional resources and support and new processes that need to be put in place so that we can address it. Not only do we want to have people do community service and ultimately be charged with the crime of illegal dumping, but we want them to pay for it as well. As mentioned earlier, we spend $1.8 million picking up after people. And so what we want to do is to charge restitution for those people that we catch. In addition, make the process for catching them much easier, much faster, and have more resolve. So we've added a component this year, and this component includes using a civil court system as opposed to a criminal, in addition to a criminal court system, to track and identify those who dump in our city and to hold them accountable through the notice of violation process. We've already captured one person since we've implemented the process just last month. This was a person who actually was advertising a business to do cleanouts, and he would take the clean out and then dump it in an area in North Philadelphia around 22nd and Lippincott Street. The problem with the evidence was that it was difficult to see his face to go through the criminal court. And in normal of those cases, they may have gotten dismissed and walked away scot-free, only to continue to commit those acts again. But we used the NOV process this time through our law department, and we was able to identify the violator. We also worked with the IG office to identify and get evidence that this was the actual person. We issued them an NOV, and not only did we issue them a fine for up to $5,000, we also charged them for the restitution, which was $5,700. So in total, this person not only is now accountable for $10,700 worth of damage that it caused the city of Philadelphia through this process. We hope that this process will be an additional tool in addition to alleviate some of the support that PPD talked about, because we already heard from Council President Clark today and yourself and other council members that we need to do more and not rely solely on the police department to enforce these non-violent acts, that we need other departments to actually take place. So we're developing internally our task force within the sweep unit who can write NOVs. They're actually being trained by the law department right now to issue NOVs, develop cases, and actually present those cases in front of a court, because you still have to go in front of municipal court. It's just a civil court instead of a criminal court. We're not abandoning our criminal court case. There are some acts that are so egregious and so environmentally hazardous that we need to press charges against those people. But this process actually helps alleviate and allows us to gain a greater financial penalty and also holds them accountable. And then we can address things like their business license. I think Chairperson Curtis Jones talked earlier about the business as usual gentleman at Marion Street, where he got charged per tire. This person in this business was actually flouting the law by taking a $300 fine and just dumping wherever he wanted years ago. But they put him through this process, shut down his business, and actually held him accountable for thousands and thousands worth of fines. And now he is no longer in operation. So that is the difference. And that is some of the changes that we are embarking on in terms of the case process. It requires additional legislation. This is where you guys at City Council come in. We're happy to report that next slide, please, City. Thank you. This is our last slide. We're happy to report changes to our 10717 codes gives us the flexibility to charge restitution, to issue NOVs, to hold third parties accountable. So those U-Haul trucks that are being loaned out for illegal dumping certainly can now be held accountable by either cooperating with us or paying the bill for the illegal dumping when we trace it back to their place of business, if that was used in the actual act of a crime. And we're trying to close the loopholes for people to get out of illegal dumping cases. We know enforcement is an extremely important part of the work that we're doing in the city to prevent it from happening. We understand that we can't just clean up everywhere after everyone, because that's not going to change anything. We need to come up with different processes and procedures for addressing this type of behavior. So that is the last slide that I had, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have in regards to today's testimony, and thank all of those who presented today on this very important issue.
Thank you so much for that very informative presentation. I wanted to start off by asking you about the ways that the Streets Department proactively addresses dumping. Based on the experience of our office, and you alluded to this in your testimony, it seems like the majority of illegal dumping complaints are generated by residents who may happen to view the dumping in their neighborhoods. Can you confirm whether that's true? And can you also expound on any means that our city has of proactively identifying illegal dumping?
Yes, council member, chairperson, the majority of our complaints that we deal with and address for illegal dumping do come from citizen complaints. We recently used that data to actually do a proactive model where we are taking those who frequently complained about one particular area and then began to map and chart those areas so that we can proactively address it. But initially, those complaints did come from our residents, and that's where the majority of the complaints do come from.
Okay, when did you start this new program, and how wide scale is it? How many states are you addressing on a regular basis?
Yes, we started it last spring, right after the pandemic, because of the amount of illegal dumping that we were addressing and the amount of complaints and calls that we were getting, especially on areas that were frequently dumped on. It's citywide. That means we're divided up into 13 districts, so each complaint truck handles 10 of those complaints each day of the highest dumped on areas, and they're routed and mapped to address those areas, and that usually takes place in the first half of their day. The second half of the day, because we still have to service 311 complaints, still are responses to public members who are not on that list. So we can't leave those areas, obviously for obvious reasons, we can't go unaddressed because that would lead to more dumping for long periods of time. But there's 10 in each district of the city of Philadelphia, and there's 13 districts that we're represented. So 130 sites each day.
Okay, thank you. Our regular trash collection crews, as they're out and about collecting, resident trash, are they expected to log instances of illegal dumping that they see in the course of their daily duties? And if so, how do they do that? And then how are those instances of illegal dumping addressed?
So our crews are focused on making sure that they get residential trash that's in front of the property legally placed out on time. So we don't rely on those members to actually report that. And they can. Many of them do on their own, but that's not a policy. What we rely on is the labor crew chief, who's their supervisor, who are checking the routes up and down each and every block in a given area to report that, along with our sweep officers who are also traveling the routes to report that type of behavior for our illegal dump crews to address it. That information is put into our work order system and then tracked, and then obviously assigned to our short dump crew or a complaint truck that we have in each district to be able to address. And that's supposed to be addressed, any complaint we receive, within 24 hours, given the variety and the size of the complaint. It could take up to 5 days if there's heavy equipment involved. Could take longer depending on the areas that we have to try to service and the amount of debris we have to move. But on average, we try to get heavy equipment within 5 days and regular complaints within 24 hours.
So let me make sure that I understand. So when the trash crews are out, they don't so much focus on instances of illegal dumping, but the crew managers go block by block to try to identify illegal dumping and log that into some sort of system to be addressed?
Yes. So the crew chief is the responsible person for making sure that all the trash and recycling is up in a given area. While they're out driving around in their vehicles checking those routes, they also report illegal dump sites when it's visible to them.
Okay. And how many sites do you think are coming directly from the crew chiefs? And how many of those people exist?
I'm going to ask Deputy Commissioner Warren to jump on. He runs the day-to-day operation of the program, and he would have better knowledge of the numbers than I would.
Okay.
So we
Deputy
have,
Commissioner, please state your name for the record first, and then answer.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Got the ear. This is Keith Warren, Deputy Commissioner of Streets for Sanitation Operations. So there are 42 crew chiefs or route supervisors out on a daily basis, and this is off the top of my head, but they all turn in probably an average of 5 locations at least a day on any given route. Some areas obviously more, a few areas of the city less. Those short dumps are put into a work order system that we have, and then given out the next day for the complaint truck to collect after they collect the 10 hotspots that we identified.
Okay, thank you. And then once, the crew chiefs kind of bring in those instances of illegal dumping, what happens next? Did you say that there was one crew that kind of addresses illegal dumping?
It's a
No,
complaint truck. I'm sorry, Keith. Go ahead.
go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, what I was saying is there's a complaint truck for every district that services small residential sites, and there's one illegal dumping crew that deals with the heavy material that you see, many of them in those videos that you showed away that requires heavy equipment like backhoes and front end loaders. So it's one crew consisted of about 11 to 13 people that consists of backhoes, front end loaders, dump trucks, and any other services that we need to provide to get that debris out the way.
Okay. And how many illegal dumping sites are the complaint trucks able to get to on a daily basis?
That would depend on the size of an area, because there are some areas that are heavily dumped on, which would take up to 5 days to get to for one site, and cleaning the debris out. I think the council member talked about the areas in the district around Lindbergh Boulevard where we get frequently dumped on in behind schools and lots, and where we have to bring in and leave those guys there for a couple of days. On average, they probably get hit 2 or 3 a day in terms of the sites that we have to do if it's marginal. Some they can just do a quick pickup, and usually use complaint trucks there, and that's why we can get to so many if the debris is not as large. But those large sites do take a while for us to address.
Okay. How often are we able to hit that 5-day response time?
I'll check with Graham Quinn from 311 in reference to our compliance rate for our service level agreement. I think we've been pretty accurate in meeting that turnaround in terms of the sites that we get. But I'll have to get you that information in terms of what our completion rate is for meeting that 5-day turnaround period. And I'll make sure we do that.
Can you clarify how many crews in total Streets currently has? And could you remind us of the number of crews that you need to operate efficiently in terms of regular collection and addressing illegal dumping in the city?
Sure. So optimally, we need 230 crews out each day for trash and recycling collection. We also need an additional 30 crews in reference to the illegal, complaint, and then 15 crews for the complaint trucks. So all in all, for just trash and recycling and complaints, we need about 245 trucks to 250 trucks. And then in addition to that, because they're not just trucks, it's different equipment. So we need illegal dump crews to be able to come out. We have one illegal dump crew that addresses that well. So all in all, we need between either 250 to 275 trucks out on any given day to address things like baskets, complaints, illegal dump sites, and citywide cleaning initiatives.
And so we need somewhere between 250 to 275 trucks. But how many do we have currently?
On average, what we deploy, because it's based on both attendance and truck availability. Attendance meaning crews that report to work on time and actually performing the duties. Truck availability is for ones that don't break down. And so we do have what we call backups, so in case those things happen. So we keep in our fleet over 325 vehicles to make sure that we're meeting and have enough vehicles each day for the amount of work that's needed. Then there's the attendance issue, where we have and plan for a 20% outage for various things like sick. Obviously, that number went up for COVID-related reasons, but vacation time and all of those planning time. So on average, we're meeting that number about 80% of the time. We're putting about 200 trucks per day for trash and recycling collection, and then another 30 and 40 trucks for all other city services. So about 230, 240 out of a 275 deployment schedule that we're putting out on the streets.
So you think we're about 35 crews short what we need to be able to clean up trash, pick up trash on time and recycling on time in every neighborhood, and to proactively address illegal dumping? Yes,
because in order for us, the standard is, do you want the trash is supposed to be collected from 7 to 3 p.m. Over the years, we haven't been meeting that standard. And we have done some things with the additional crew to help alleviate that overtime and that trash that will actually run over. So I think we're in a very good position now with the administration giving us the 30 additional crews for that night shift that allows us to improve collections. Before that, though, we were struggling. We struggled tremendously with keeping trash on time. As you know, in your district, you were getting calls quite frequently about when we were going to get out of this situation. We're happy to report over the last 4 months of consistent data that trash has been on time. We need to improve some in recycling. We need additional crews to be able to do that. We also need attendance to improve. So we worked on attendance policies as well. And we've gotten great cooperation from our union reps.
Can you tell me, Commissioner?
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. You froze for a second on my end. Can you tell me what the cost is per crew?
Deputy Commissioner Newman is on the line. He can give you the cost per crew. He's the Deputy Commissioner of our administrative unit.
Hi, Councilmember Gautier. How are you today?
Hello. Please state your name for the record and answer the question.
Christopher Newman, Deputy Commissioner for Administration. I believe I actually have to get the number per crew, but for our overall collections, the amount that we pay budgetarily for fiscal year 22 that we project is going to be paid out is $120.9 million for recycling and for trash collections.
Can you break that down to a per crew cost, if possible, or just an estimate?
Yeah, we can. You can do that right now, Chris, while we're waiting.
Yeah.
Okay, and while we're answering questions, we can get back to it, so we won't hold you up.
Okay.
Hey, Commissioner, Maria, do you have it?
No, Chris will get it. Thanks, Chris. I don't want to hold the council member up due to time constraints, so we'll get it. We'll get it to it immediately.
Thank you so much. I heard you speak in your presentation about, you're feeling that you're serving the city evenly and equitably. And so I wanted to know what your response is to the reporting that was done by the Philadelphia Inquirer from November of last year and to the city controller's analysis, both showing pretty stark disparities with respect to the rates of on-time trash and recycling collection and in the percentage of service calls for issues like on-time trash pickup and illegal dumping that occur in neighborhoods outside of Center City. I mean, from as far as I know, the controller pretty much took publicly available 311 data and just analyzed it to see where those complaints were coming from. And to me, it shows a clear inequity. How do you respond to that?
So we work with, and thank you, and I want to thank the controller for that report as well. We worked with our office to provide the data. We was very open and let her know what the challenges were and some of the things that we've done. And so she did identify that this was based on data that we submitted back in 2019 and 2020. There was showing some inequities in that report that we complied and we acknowledged. And said, yes, this is an issue. We need to address it, and we need more additional crews to make sure it's equitably done. I can tell you in Center City alone, it's not just an equity issue. It was a public safety issue for us. For us, we need to make sure that because of incidents that occur with vehicles and compactors and the amount of traffic and the number of pedestrians, and not just, as was stated earlier, unfortunately, elite people who are wealthy, well off, and of different color of persuasion. There's a multitude of pedestrians that come in the city and that we have to protect and watch out for. There's our homeless transient population. There is school students. There's hospitals. There's people that come to work. When you add that many vehicles there is a safety issue when we're traveling in high compacted congested areas like Center City. So our goal is to try to get in and get out quickly so that we can service other neighborhoods. There was an unfortunate tragedy in 2017 of Emily Fredericks that was actually killed by a compactor. And so we certainly don't want that to happen to anyone. And our goal is to try to mitigate those problems as quickly as possible by doing schedule shifts and moving in and out of city when there's not as many people down here during rush hour.
Does it make sense that we would try to improve public safety in the city of Philadelphia by focusing on Center City when the majority of the public safety issues are happening in Black and brown neighborhoods? That doesn't track to me in terms of
absolutely.
where people are most.
Yeah, we agree 100% that everyone should receive equitable service, and I think our department strives to do that. And if you look over, the work that we've done over the last year or two, especially in both sanitation and transportation, we try to address those areas. The majority of our illegal dumping work does occur in Black and brown communities where those challenges occur. I think it was talked about earlier, also, council member, that it occurs because there's so many opportunities with vacant land and blighted buildings that it's hard to be able to keep up, and it's easy for people to come there and dump. Therefore, we have to continuously come back to those locations. When we do things productively with vacant land, I was actually out last week. We had a program that we just kicked off called Keep It Clean Philly. And we go out with our crews and our trucks, and we meet up with residents to talk about these challenges. On 34th and Mantua, right behind the zoo, we were out there last week. We cleaned up certain areas as you get close to 38, but what they've done with green space around 34th and Mantua, where we used to be a heavily dump spot, is they put fences up, they greened the areas, and they maintain the lots. We saw no illegal dumping there. But if you went 3 blocks west, closer to like 34th and Haverford or 36th and Haverford, you just saw dumping of tires and debris all over the place. So it leads to the support that if you clean and green a certain area and maintain it, the dumping won't occur. So I think that's part of the strategy. It's the long-term overall goal should be for the city to make sure we make the best use of vacant lots in those communities. That will eliminate the illegal dumping. There's no opportunities and no quick, easy access to do that in Center City because there are no vacant lots down there. There are no blighted areas or blighted locations. So it's hard for them to do that without being caught and captured. In those other areas, it's not. So better lighting, making use of better vacant land, all of those things will play a huge difference in terms of reducing illegal dumping, as well as enforcement and some of the strategies that we talked about today.
Thank you so much. I do think we have to be very honest about the fact that this has been playing out in a way that is not equitable, right? I think we have to be honest about the fact that people feel, not just feel, they are not seeing relief on this issue if they live in neighborhoods outside of Center City. They're not seeing that relief as quickly, and they're not seeing that relief as consistently. And so I think we have to start by being honest in order to move to, a different circumstance. I would be interested in hearing you talk about how the Streets Department is mobilizing or intends to mobilize to address these disparities. And in particular, in what ways could the Streets Department better service and prioritize the 14 neighborhoods with the highest levels of shootings in our city?
I think our office is currently working with the administration and the managing director's office on Operation Pinpoint. And that's one of the crime fighting strategies that addresses some of the challenges in those neighborhoods, areas like West Philadelphia, areas like Kensington, where we're actually working to how can we improve services to reduce crime. Everyone understands that better lighting is necessary. So we're looking at things like improved street lighting with LEDs to make areas brighter. With those illegally dumped crews, they're specifically designed to try to address those 14 districts and areas that you just mentioned so that we can be more timely and more proactive in addressing those dump sites and not waiting them to get into a condition where they're contributing to crime that actually decreasing crime. So we're using that data actually to implement and invest in those neighborhoods. There's $150,000 that the managing directors has already allocated to do better lighting in some of those districts, and we'll continue to provide more resources as they become available.
Thank you. What changes, in your perspective, are needed in the FY23 budget to pick up trash and recycling on time in every neighborhood and address illegal dumping more effectively? How much is needed to get to an optimal staffing level? What is needed in terms of an investment in technology, and what investments are needed to improve equity?
So I think we're on our way with this budget with an investment which is a good start. And I'm not saying it gives us everything that we need to get to a point where you want to see it right now. We are getting additional short dumping crews. You said we have one for the entire city, and we all understand that that is definitely not too much enough to address the amount of illegal dumping. I think you and Council Member Baz all said that you can use one in your district alone, let alone the entire city. So the idea is try to continue to build and expand upon the number of illegal dump crews so that we can proactively address it in a timely manner. The longer you leave it, the worse it becomes. And then it becomes more inviting to other people as well. So we need to continue to ramp up our crews in terms of illegal dumping to address these issues. We currently have 3. Optimally, we would love to have additional crews in every district, on every area, which is 6 areas. So, eventually we hope to work up to that number and to be able to get 1 illegal dump crew for every area of the city that we have in sanitation. In terms of trash and recycling collection, I'm sorry, you was getting ready to say something?
No, go ahead.
In terms of trash and recycling collection, I kind of gave you the numbers where we were in terms of crews. So we were able, after the pandemic, we're able to add additional 120 people. Many of them were hired full time, and we were able to keep them in our budget. And we added an additional 30 crews on a night shift. So again, I think we're headed in the right direction to get optimal trash and recycling picked up by 3 o'clock in every neighborhood in every city. But we do need additional crews to make sure that we're hitting that number, along with better and improved attendance and better equipment. So we'll get you the numbers in terms of, for the entire city, what it would take for us to be at 3 o'clock every day service.
Great. And what about technology? What investments in FY23 could we make in technology to help us with proactively addressing dumping?
So we're big on technology, contrary to some people's thoughts that we don't use it as a data source. I think we launched a couple of programs for public view and accessibility to help us be more accountable and also be more efficient. We launched Street Smart PHL, and Street Smart PHL is a tool that the public can actually use to actually go on and track our services. They can see where trash trucks are in any given day. We've launched it for our mechanical street sweeping program to see where mechanical brooms are and where they're cleaning. We've also done it for other transportation services like paving. We're doing it for street block and street closures. All of those things that are core services that are important to the public, we make that available online for the public to be able to view, and we use that data to help improve efficiencies. For instance, if trucks aren't getting out of the yard on time at 8 o'clock, we're able to track that through our GPS-enabled system to be able to justify and ensure that we have a standard for them to be on the route. So that improves things like on-time trash collection. We're able to assess the conditions of roadways with our paving tool, to be able to say this street hasn't been paved in 25 years and it has X amount of potholes that's located on it. It needs to be on the paving list for next year. So that's some of the things that how we're using technology to improve services. Not only are we using it internally, we share it with the public so they can visually see it as well. And that's through streetsmartphl.gov.
Thank you. I have a few questions for the law department, and then we can open it up to other committee members for questions. Is Kristen Bray from the law department here?
Yes, I am, council member.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all of the hard work that you and your colleagues do to help with enforcement. Can you tell us for the record what role the law department plays in addressing illegal dumping? And can you state your name for the record before you answer?
Of course. My name is Kristen Bray, and I'm the Chief Deputy City Solicitor for the Code and Public Nuisance Litigation Unit in the City of Philadelphia's Law Department. So the Law Department has the pleasure of working with our colleagues in the Streets Department and the Police Department in advising and counseling them on how to effectively prosecute short dumping violations as a civil matter. We also help them with drafting notices of violation, which are a predicate and prerequisite to pursuing an action in the Court of Common Pleas for purposes of prosecution. And when those violations that the Streets Department and Police Department issue remain unchallenged, we bring a civil action against the short dumpers. And in those actions, we seek the payment of fines, which are up to $5,000 currently in the code. And we seek the cost of the abatement that the Street Department has engaged in. And Commissioner Williams spoke very eloquently today about changes that are supposed to be made to the Philadelphia Code, and when those changes are made, we will use those tools that are in that proposed ordinance to more effectively and aggressively go after short dumpers. Finally, Councilwoman, on the back end, the law department also works with our partners at the Department of Licenses and Inspections, and if there are certain violators who run businesses that they are using to do short dumping, we will work with licenses and inspections to revoke licenses if that is appropriate.
Thank you so much for that. Can you tell me how long it takes for an NOV that remains unresolved to get to the law department? And how long does it take for the law department to bring the matter to court and obtain a judgment against the violator?
So typically the violator would have a certain amount of time to appeal the violation. Once that appeal period has expired, we typically are able to bring the case into court within 30 days. In the most recent one that was referred, we were able to bring it into court within 24 hours of the appeal period expiring. After that case is filed, the court issues a case management conference, and we typically are having a hearing within 90 days to 6 months, depending on the court's calendar. When we have that hearing, we seek a judgment at that first listing, and then when we have that judgment, it becomes final after 30 days if there is no appeals, at which point we can send it to our collections contractor to do their good work in trying to get the judgment paid.
Okay. For clarity, how long does the violator have to comply with the NOV before the case is referred to law?
So the violator under these particular notices do not have time to necessarily comply. With other notices of violation in the context of typically license and inspections violations or health violations, they can have up to 30 days before we would bring an action.
Okay. Taking the commissioner's example of the illegal dumper that he talked about a few minutes ago, who the law department prosecuted in civil court, what happens if that illegal dumper doesn't pay his $5,000 fine and the $5,000 in restitution?
So with that particular dumper, we are going to seek a civil judgment against the violator. If the court imposes that judgment, we work with a collections contractor who is very aggressive and goes after the illegal violators' bank accounts, cash assets, their businesses, their cars, and any other assets that they have to pay off the judgment that is due to the city, along with penalties and interest and costs to the city in pursuing the judgment.
Okay, thank you for that. I've also heard that you, in particular, facilitate cross-department collaboration among city clients to address enforcement issues. Can you expound on that work?
Sure. So in this particular context, we've worked very closely with getting all the various departments to work together, particularly streets and police, because both of them have enforcement responsibilities here. And then on the back end, when we have people who are contractors who are using short dumping as a way to reduce cost instead of doing business appropriately, we will work with license and inspections to use the tools in their tool chest to have them actually enforce things more aggressively here, and using all the tools available to the city to make sure that businesses are operating appropriately and legally and not detrimentally impacting our neighborhoods.
Thank you so much. That concludes my questions. Are there any questions from members of the committee for Commissioner Williams or the other witnesses from the administration? Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner, for being here and for also the work that you do every day and for making a presentation about the things that you want to improve in this area. I look forward to us continuing to work together on this issue in this budget and moving forward until we get it right.
I want to thank you too, Council Member. This is very important work. This is one of our highest priorities in terms of addressing. It's been our biggest challenge forever. And we're glad that, City Council, you leading the charge along with other council members, Council Chairperson Jones, President Clark, and so many others are taking this extremely seriously. Together, we can address this issue, and we appreciate all the support that you've given us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ms. Sherrills, who is the next witness to testify?
I believe that brings us to the end of our panelists and into public comment.
Okay, great. Who's up first for public comment?
Miss Aminata San.
Hello?
Ms. Aminata, are you there and connected?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Good afternoon. Are you hearing me?
Yes, please state your name and proceed.
Good afternoon. This is Aminata Sandra Calhoun, and I want to first thank my council person, Jamie Gauthier, on the Just Service Bill 220232. I really appreciate that bill, and also, Councilwoman, your position this afternoon. You have presented some excellent questions to Carlton Williams and the attorney that just spoke, and I definitely wanted to send out kudos to Nick. I see there is a dire need to implement the program that he was working on, like, in the morning. It needs to be implemented. So for lack of going any further and using the time that I do have, I am identified and deemed as a person from low income, underserved community that is receiving unjust service. And I want to focus on today the tire dumping in West Philadelphia, throughout West Philadelphia to Southwest Philadelphia. And the main situation I want to focus on that is of a dire emergency critical need right now is an area at Marion and Girard, 4600 Marion Girard, a city-owned land property. Let me roll back first. In reference to this city dumping, tire dumping, I feel strongly if we address the tire repair shops that's in our community, some right next door to homes, such as business Back to New. Back to New is a enemy and a toxic haven to our community. I have witnessed and have pictures of Back to New dumping tires in the city-owned lot at 4600 Marion and Girard, where my city council person just had a press release conference there on Thursday, April the 21st. And then on Monday, April the 25th, picture caught on camera, Back to New dumping tires there between 5:30 and 5:45 on that Monday. So here's what I'm proposing. I'm proposing that City Council sit down with zoning to zone out of our community where we live, where we work and play in our children. That to zone out any tire repair businesses being in our residential community. Let's start there. If we don't have these tire repair shops in our communities, that would begin to alleviate some of this illegal tire dumping because they are doing it. The property that I'm speaking of is at the mouth of Global Academy Charter School and Blankenburg. Now, what needs to happen, today is Thursday, we need to have a caravan of trucks there on Monday morning beginning to remove those tires because the residents in that immediate community is on TFR, Tire Fire Watch, because the land is right at the mouth of their backyards and at the mouth of Global Academy Charter School and Blankenburg. And if we cannot get a caravan of trucks out there Monday starting to remove those tires where it has already, the neighbors have already had 2 fires. And if we let this tire fire business really take place, it's going to be very critical for West Philadelphia in that immediate area. So why the budget is trying to put the budget through and we're continuing to talk, let's talk and let's look at what type of active action we can penetrate come Monday morning, May the 9th, and especially where Marion and Girard, that city-owned property land is. We need attention critically on that right now, and looking at city council, whoever you need to sit down with in the zoning to begin to review the zoning and zone out the tire repair shops that is an enemy in our community and providing much environmental injustice, because with those tires sitting on the ground, which is environmentally incorrect, and those tires holding water, they're right now accumulating mosquito larvae that's turning into mosquitoes that will be eating up the area. So we need to look at removing these tire repair shops out of our community, back to new, which is at Belmont and Girard, 1224 Belmont and Girard. Then you have the other at 4052 West Girard. Then you have the other at Belmont and Girard. That's 3 tire repair shops in a radius of 2 blocks from each other. Do we need that much tire repair? No, we do not. And they are an injustice, environmental hazard in our community. Now, with the trash and litter, I am pleased to say, and trying to work to alleviate that, Centennial Parkside in the East Parkside section of West Philadelphia weekly remove a minimum of 200 trash bags, trash off the streets, that accumulate to 200 trash bags between Monday and Friday. By the time we get to Friday, we have a minimum of 200 trash bags that we have accumulated from cleaning our streets around parks around West Philadelphia and Councilwoman Jamie Gauthier's office, and then in Curtis Jones's part of his little niche there, where in Curtis Jones' niche is the severely back to new tire repair shop that is a pure hemorrhoid in our community.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
In closing, Councilman Curtis Jones, it would behoove you to look into the back to new tire business, because that particular owner of that business is dropping your name in reference to he telling us, the community, he's not going anywhere and he will do what he wants to do where he needs to do it. And I don't think you would like that.
I don't think the council member would stand for that, but I'll follow up with him. And if you can send us the photos that you have of the business doing the dumping, we'll report that right away. And we'll also work with streets to get, to find out what the plan is for that lot, because I agree with you. It's egregious and it's dangerous. And I thank you for all of your work and all of your advocacy. And Commissioner, did you want to address?
We'll send someone immediately out to look at those tires for the immediate hazard.
And I think it's the 4700 block of Marion. It's right by the Global Leadership School.
Got it. Thank you.
Ms. Sherrills, who's the next public commenter?
Next, we have Diane Payne.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name for the record and proceed with your comment.
Thank you. My name is Diane Payne. I'm a resident of the Northeast. I'm glad for the opportunity to talk about the illegal dumping that plagues our communities. Trash in our neighborhoods is a soul-crushing and demoralizing fact of life that impacts both our sense of worth as citizens of Philadelphia and the well-being of our increasingly fragile environment. As our elected officials grapple with how to spend limited funds, it is often easy to dedicate more money to the horrific conditions we see in our daily news feed. But we cannot arrest and incarcerate our way out of the violence and drugs that plague our neighborhoods. Instead of increasing our police state, we must increase residents' quality of life and opportunities. One such example of that is grappling with illegal dumping. Hopefully, hearings like this will help to open a path to address this problem. Some areas to think about include understanding why dumping is happening and finding out if we can address an inherent need, creating sustainable workforce that is dedicated to addressing this problem, enforcement mechanisms that work and are not for show, partnering with community groups, and City Council making real efforts to indicate concern and involvement in addressing and impacting this problem. As part of the 215 Northeast group, we have been tackling one stretch of local roadway commonly known as Snake Road, but it's actually Newtown Road. This road is a short one-way connector that is popular with dumpers. Our group has staged multiple cleanups and fought for and secured one camera for the area, only to find out there is little to no enforcement capability with the camera. We live in a world where the little guy gets crushed daily and on all fronts. It is truly hurtful to feel like you've engaged in a campaign to alleviate a harmful neighborhood issue, only to find out it is basically meaningless. We need meaningful City Council involvement in the illegal dumping in our neighborhoods and across our cities. Thank you for tackling this issue.
Thank you, Ms. Payne, for your comment and for your work and advocacy. Ms. Sherrills, who's the next public commenter?
Teresa Baker.
Ms. Teresa, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Please state your name for the record and proceed with your comment.
Teresa Baker. My comment is, okay, behind my house, it's a dump site, an eyesore for everybody on the block. Schools surrounding it, it's become hazardous. I'm just glad to see that it's being addressed. Just today, when I got up to go to a doctor's appointment, somebody else done dumped a car on Marion Avenue. And it's like, you try and we keep trying and they keep doing it. It's a no-ending battle, it seems like. But hopefully we will get to the end of that battle soon.
Are you finished with your, does that conclude your comment?
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much, and thank you for, ringing the alarm on this issue for yourself and for your neighbors. We really appreciate you. And I hope that you'll continue to consider me and this council your partner in resolving this issue for your block.
Oh, yes. I mean, I have plenty of ideas. I mean, we can get, if you and your people talk and start like adopt a block and have people, be the adoptees of the block. We're the eyes and ears to you to know what's going on. And if it's stuff that we need on the block, we know who to go to.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful idea. And we do have the commissioner on. Commissioner, for your knowledge, Ms. Teresa lives directly behind the lot on Marion. So they've had to deal with quite a lot there.
Yeah,
Yes.
I saw that, and we're definitely going to make sure that we get someone out there with that issue, with the tires and the things that we have to do.
I grew up on that block. That's my family home on that block on Marion Avenue. My grandparents, we've been in that house for over 80 years. Different families in and out of that house since my grandparents passed. So, I mean, I want to build the neighborhood back up.
Yeah,
Get it back to where it was.
You and your neighbors deserve to live in a clean and beautiful space. So thank you so much for being here and for all of your advocacy. And we will be out to remedy that lot and clean it up.
Okay. And I will pitch in to help.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You have a good evening.
You too. Queen Judith Robinson, are you still there? Miss Patty Aiken, are you still there?
Patty Eakin had to log off.
Okay. How about Rodney Christian? Okay. Is there anyone else here to testify?
Good day. You have reached Judith Robinson. You're a real estate professional. Please leave a name.
Okay. Thank you so much. It sounds like she had to leave. Is there anyone else here to testify on the resolution whose name has not yet been called? There being no one else here to testify on this resolution, this concludes the business before the Committee on Public Safety today. I want to thank everybody who came on and shared their work and their story today. I want to thank all of our partners from the administration. I know that you all are passionate about this issue, and I look forward to working together to resolve it, starting with this budget season. And thank you to all my colleagues on the Public Safety Committee. Have a good evening, everyone.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.